The first snowfall of winter arrived, and the eldest princess hosted a snow-viewing feast. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Jiyu Yuanxiao accepted Jia, her princess's overture of affection. She held out a sprig of plum blossom as a token of her heart, and he took it steadily in his hand, his thumb brushing gently over the petals. That lingering, tender gesture stabbed like a needle into my eyes. I drew a sharp breath, tightened my cloak around my shoulders, and turned to leave. But the princess suddenly called out to me, "Miss Jiang." My footsteps faltered. When I turned around, I saw the princess looking at me with a smile, a faint glint of provocation in her eyes. The feast was bustling with noble ladies, some taking shelter from the snow in the pavilions, others admiring the flowers in the woods. I had hidden myself behind a tree, my white foxfur cloak blending seamlessly into the snowy landscape. I had thought no one would notice me. It seemed my hiding place had been far too clumsy. I curtsied politely. "Your Royal Highness." Princess Jia was dressed in a vibrant red gown. She descended the steps and walked toward me. Every pair of eyes in the vicinity followed her movement, including Jiyu Yuanxiao's. Our gazes met briefly in the air. Then his drifted away, as if I were nothing more than a passing stranger. I lowered my eyes, a dull ache welling up in my chest, so intense it felt like it might burst. The princess stopped right in front of me, her expression a mix of childish innocence and malicious delight. "Miss Jiang, you are betrothed to Jingyun. Does that not make us family soon? I shall be his legal wife, and you his concubine. Then, I shall overlook the incident at Duobao Pavilion where you stole my hairpin. For now." Her tone was overly magnanimous. My breath hitched. I looked at Jiyu Yuanxiao instinctively. He was just watching quietly, not a single word of denial escaped his lips. Jingyun was his courtesy name. Even I had only dared to call him by it twice, coaxed and cajoled into doing so. I was too shy, saying I would wait until after our wedding. But now, he and the princess, had they grown that intimate? My throat tightened, my vision blurring at the edges. The other ladies tittered, offering their congratulations to the princess, their words laced with thinly veiled mockery as they glanced at me. "Your Royal Highness and young Marquis are truly a match made in heaven." "Some people should just stop dreaming," another echoed. "Indeed, a man as distinguished as the young Marquis deserves only someone as noble as your Royal Highness." Princess Jia looked absolutely delighted. She rewarded the ladies generously, casting a glance at me out of the corner of her eye, a glance brimming with undisguised triumph. As the youngest daughter of the eldest princess, she was doted on by the emperor, getting everything she ever wanted. Her temperament was notoriously arrogant and domineering. Perhaps the only thing she had ever failed to obtain was Jiyu Yuanxiao. Because of my betrothal to him, and our mutual affection, she had tormented me repeatedly over the years, every single time. Jiyu Yuanxiao had stepped forward to shield me. He had protected me so well. But now, he stood silently on the steps, watching everything unfold with cold indifference. A flicker of hope stirred in my heart. He lifted his foot and walked over. His expression impassive, his dark eyes rested on me for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "The snow is beautiful," he said, "but the cold seeps into the bones. You should go inside the hall to warm up." As he spoke, his gaze shifted to the princess. He raised his hand and gently adjusted her cloak, an intimate gesture. The sound of my shattering hope echoed loud in my ears. An endless void of darkness swallowed me whole, the noise around me amplified to a deafening roar. Yet I could hear nothing at all. The princess let out a tinkling laugh and followed him into the hall. The other noble ladies trailed behind them. The palace maids closed the heavy hall doors. Even so, the sound of the princess's giggles and Jiyu Yuanxiao's indulgent voice drifted faintly out to me. Snowflakes began to fall again. In the vast plum grove, I was completely alone. I tilted my head back, breathing in sharply. The tiny snowflakes landed on my face, melting into droplets of water. Footsteps sounded behind me. A red umbrella opened, shielding me from the falling snow. "Why are you crying?" A warm, jade-like voice sounded from behind me. A luxurious foxfur cloak draped itself over my shoulders. It was the birthday gift I had carefully picked out for him at Duobao Pavilion half a month ago. "Fujichu." I looked up at him, His eyes were soft and gentle as they gazed down at me. All my pent-up grievances found an outlet in an instant. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Fujichu sighed softly, pulling me into his arms and wrapping the cloak tightly around me. I tried to push him away, struggling to break free. Such intimate contact was highly inappropriate. But Fujichu held me firmly, pressing me even closer to his chest. "Cry," he whispered, "no one can see you here." That one sentence shattered the last of my resolve. All thoughts of etiquette and propriety vanished from my mind. I just wanted to cry, to let all my pain pour out. What did I do wrong? Why is he treating me like this? He was never like this before. I clutched his robe tightly, sobbing until I had no strength left. Fujichu patted my back gently, soothing me like a child. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his warm voice thick with self-blame. "I came back too late." The emperor had sent Fujichu away on an official mission half a year ago. He had written to me, promising he would return before my birthday. After a long while, I finally managed to calm my tears. I pushed him lightly. "Fujichu, let me go. Do you feel better now?" I looked up at him, my eyes still misty with tears. Fujichu brushed the remaining tears from my cheeks with his thumb, sighing, "I told you before, he is not the right man for you." I clung to his sleeve instinctively, looking at him with pleading eyes. "Brother, help me." Jiyu Yuanxiao had accepted the princess's affections. Our betrothal would undoubtedly have to be broken off. I would never be anyone's concubine. But the Jiyu family wielded far more power and influence than mine. My father did not approve of ending the engagement. In fact, he was willing to let me enter the Jiyu household as a concubine. So I had no one to turn to but Fujichu. He had been fostered in my family when we were children, and I had always called him Brother Fu. Back then, he had been withdrawn and brooding, and I was the only one who dared to cling to him. Now, he was the most powerful Grand Secretary in the imperial court. The emperor's most trusted advisor, an illustrious figure standing above 10,000 others. If he spoke up for me, the matter of ending the engagement would be resolved in an instant. Fujichu looked down at me, his dark eyes unreadable. A sense of relief washed over me. I stepped back, intending to curtsy to him in gratitude. But before I could bow, Fujichu caught hold of my arm. "There is no need for formalities," he said. "I will take you out of the palace." I followed silently beside Fujichu, the umbrella in his hand tilted fully over me, shielding me from the snow. For some reason, I turned my head to glance back at the distant palace hall. The tightly closed door was now ajar a crack, and a corner of a familiar robe flashed past the gap. Fujichu spoke suddenly. "Do not worry, no one will see us. They are all too busy flattering the young marquis and the princess." I turned back and nodded, my voice muffled. Fujichu did not say much on the way home. As soon as I returned, news of Jiyu Yuanxiao and the princess's betrothal spread like wildfire. Along with the scandal of my public humiliation, overnight, I became the laughingstock of the entire capital. When my father heard the news, he flew into a rage and confined me to my quarters as punishment. My mother came to plead with me, urging me to humble myself and agree to enter the Jiyu household as a concubine, warning me that life as the legal wife of a marquis would be fraught with peril. I did not bother to argue. My heart was filled with anxious anticipation, waiting for news from Fujichu. But to my surprise, it was Jiyu Yuanxiao who came to my house first. He was dressed in a black robe, his expression dark and stormy. No one accompanied him. My heart clenched with a jolt of fear. The foot I had just stepped forward with retreated back. In the next moment, Jiyu Yuanxiao's cold voice cut through the air. "Since you are here, come in. This is your home. Surely you do not think I would eat you alive." His sharp gaze pierced through the door, his stare so intense it felt like a physical hand tightening around my throat. "Here we go again." I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and curtsied formally. "Young Marquis." Jiyu Yuanxiao did not respond. He sat there, sipping his tea with elegant composure. Wisps of steam curled upward from his cup. He lifted his eyes slowly to look at me. "You want to break off the engagement." His tone was casual, giving no hint of anger. But my palms were already soaked with sweat. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. I chose my words carefully. "The young Marquis is a man of unparalleled distinction, and Her Royal Highness is of incomparable nobility. I am humble and lowly by birth. I know my place and would never presume to come between you. Therefore, Gu Yuanxiao cut me off abruptly. Jiang Wn. His dark pupils swirled with emotions I could not decipher. But his fingers tightened around the teacup, a clear sign that his temper was fraying at the edges. Our betrothal was arranged by our ancestors. We have already exchanged our horoscopes and formalized the engagement. Do you think it can be broken off so easily? His words ignited a surge of grievance in my heart. So he did remember. He remembered that our betrothal was an ancestral arrangement, that we were on the verge of marriage. I drew a deep breath, forcing down the bitter ache in my chest, and said slowly, "My grandfather promised me that I would be your legal wife. Her Royal Highness is deeply in love with you. How will you choose, young Marquis?" No sooner had the words left my mouth than a sharp cracking sound echoed through the room. The teacup in Gu Yuanxiao's hand had shattered into pieces. Tea mixed with blood dripped down onto the tabletop. Jiang Wn. My name fell from his lips, sending a chill down my spine. I stumbled backward a step in fear. Gu Yuanxiao's eyes fixed on me, his gaze filled with deep affection and reluctance. But more than anything else, there was rage and hatred. He stood up abruptly. The overwhelming force of his anger crashing down on me like a tidal wave. His face was dark and menacing. "You are forcing me." I gritted my teeth, lifting my chin to meet his aggressive stare head-on. "I dare not," I said. "I am merely helping the young Marquis make his choice." Silence hung heavy in the air for a heartbeat. The faint anger on Gu Yuanxiao's face twisted into something terrifying, the veins on his forehead throbbing violently. As if I had struck a nerve, fear gripped my heart. I turned and tried to run, but Gu Yuanxiao was on me in 2 strides, his hands clamping down hard on my shoulders. The veins on the back of his hands bulged prominently. The pain in my shoulders shot through me, filling me with shock and anger. "Let go of me." I struggled to push him away, but my strength was utterly insignificant compared to his. Gu Yuanxiao closed in on me, his eyes bloodshot with rage. He ground out his words through clenched teeth. "What right do you have to make choices for me? Who do you think you are?" There was such intense, unbridled hatred in his voice. "Tell me, what gives you the audacity to call off this engagement? Do you truly believe you can walk away unscathed after ensnaring me? I'll tell you this, it's impossible. Jiang Wn. Even if you have to enter the Marquis's mansion as a concubine, you will marry me. This is what you owe me." I never could have imagined that the bright, gentle young man who once set off lanterns and admired the moon with me would turn so dark and furious overnight. As if he were an entirely different person, he had gone mad, and it felt like I was losing my mind right along with him. I shot back at him, my voice loud and trembling with emotion. "What do I owe you, Gu Yuanxiao? Tell me exactly what I owe you." Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face as I glared back at him. "You were the one who promised me a lifetime of happiness. And yet you're the one who's now cozying up to the princess. You were the one who swore to give me the very best of everything in the world, and now you're the one forcing me to be your concubine. Gu Yuanxiao, tell me, what exactly do I owe you? What unspeakable crime have I committed, Jiang Wn, to deserve such treatment from you?" For a split second, a flicker of stunned confusion crossed Gu Yuanxiao's face, but it vanished in an instant, replaced by utter, unbridled fury. He roared at me, his voice shaking with rage. "You owe me a debt that you will spend your entire lifetime repaying. You'll never be able to pay it off. Jiang Wn, no matter what I do to you, you deserve it. You should accept it without a single complaint." He paused, then a cruel, mocking smile tugged at his lips, as if he had just remembered something. "You think clinging to Fu Jichu will get you out of this engagement? Let me make one thing clear, I will never agree to end it, and as long as I refuse, the Emperor will never dare to dissolve our betrothal. If you had even an ounce of decency left in you, you would stay far away from Fu Jichu, instead of sneaking around behind everyone's backs, throwing yourself into his arms." My mind went blank. I thought back to that day in the palace, the door that had closed, then reopened a crack. So he really had seen us. If word of this got out, I would have dragged Fujichu down with me. He was such an honorable, distinguished man. If he were to be tainted by scandal because of me, then I truly would be guilty of an unforgivable sin. All my anger, all my defiance, drained out of me in an instant. Gu Yuanxiao looked down at me, towering over me with contempt. Seeing that I had fallen silent, his expression twisted into even greater fury. Jiang Wan. Don't play the innocent victim, don't stand there looking like you've been wronged beyond measure, and don't even dream of clinging to someone else. Even if you die, you will die in the Marquis's mansion. With those blood-curdling words, Gu Yuanxiao flung his sleeve in disgust and stormed away, leaving without a single backward glance. I stared at his retreating figure, my legs giving way beneath me as I collapsed to the floor. After the initial wave of terror faded, a profound, soul-crushing sadness washed over me. What do I owe him? I couldn't help but wonder. Since when had my wholehearted devotion been trampled underfoot, subjected to such cruel humiliation? What exactly did I do to deserve this? Exhausted both physically and mentally, I dragged myself back to my room and collapsed onto my bed, my mind filled with confusion and despair. Since when had everything gone so horribly wrong? It seemed like it all started 3 months ago, during the autumn hunt. I could still picture Gu Yuanxiao riding his horse, holding the reins in one hand and a bow in the other, smiling brightly at me. He had said, "Wanwan, wait for me. Once I win the grand prize, I'll add it to my betrothal gifts and marry you in the most magnificent way possible." He had reached out to brush a strand of hair from my face, his eyes overflowing with love and affection. "God, I wish I could marry you tomorrow. Why can't we move the wedding date up? Those old fogies in the Marquis's mansion are driving me crazy." Back then, he had been so full of youthful vigor, his eyes and his heart filled with nothing but me. But then, disaster struck in the woods. Princess Jiahe was attacked and abducted. Gu Yuanxiao had happened upon the scene, and in his efforts to save the princess, he had been gravely injured. After he woke up from his injuries, everything changed. The young man who had once loved and cherished me had become a stranger, gloomy, irritable, and full of anger. When I went to the mansion to visit him, his manservant had blocked me at the gate, sneering that I was of low birth and unworthy of his master. That incident had made me the laughingstock of the entire capital for weeks on end. Now that I thought about it, that manservant would never have dared to treat me that way without his master's explicit orders. I didn't understand why Gu Yuanxiao was refusing to see me. But I still sent him conciliatory gifts, his favorite peach blossom pastries, made by my own hands, but he had only glanced at them disdainfully before sweeping them off the table, letting the dogs fight over the crumbs. He had said he'd lost his taste for such cloyingly sweet things. Now I realized it wasn't the peach blossom pastries he'd grown tired of, it was me. This had gone on for months. Once, he had even sneaked into my boudoir in the middle of the night, confronting me in a fit of madness. He had bombarded me with questions asking me why I'd done it, if my conscience ever troubled me, if I had ever felt an ounce of regret, all questions I couldn't begin to understand. That night, his terrifying, unrecognizable expression had erased the memory of the gentle young man I had once loved, replacing it entirely. I had started to fear him, to shrink away from him, but a tiny flicker of hope had still lingered in my heart. After all, we had grown up together. Perhaps he was still unwell. Perhaps, until he had accepted the princess's affections, I was tired, so very, very tired. I couldn't keep fighting anymore. 13 years of friendship and love, if it was truly gone, then so be it. Gu Yuanxiao, what exactly do I owe you? I fell into a deep, fitful sleep, plagued by bizarre, terrifying dreams that left me drenched in cold sweat. In my delirium, I could hear voices all around me, my father, my mother, my maidservants. When I finally woke up, it felt as though a lifetime had passed. "You're awake," a warm, gentle voice reached my ears. A dry, warm palm rested on my forehead, checking my temperature. I turned my head and saw Fujichu sitting beside my bed. He was dressed in a snow-white robe, looking as elegant and dignified as ever. He let out a soft sigh of relief, withdrawing his hand. "Your fever has finally broken." I stared at him, dazed and confused, struggling to make sense of my surroundings. Fujichu took the initiative to explain. 3 days ago, you suddenly came down with a high fever and fell into a coma. The physicians were at a loss as to how to treat you. As soon as I heard the news, I immediately requested the royal physicians to come and attend to you. How are you feeling now, brother? My voice was hoarse and raw, my throat burning with pain. So I really had been ill. First, drink some water. Fujitsu carefully helped me sit up, pouring a cup of warm water and bringing it to my lips. My whole body felt weak and limp. I leaned on his arm, sipping the water slowly, one small mouthful at a time. He looked at me, his tone filled with helplessness and heartfelt concern. It's just Gu Yuanxiao. Why did you have to torture yourself like this? I paused, pushing the cup away slightly, then forced myself to sit up straighter. Turning to look at him, Fujitsu had first come to live at the Jiang mansion when he was only 5 years old. He had been a thin, scrawny child, quiet and withdrawn. And no one in the mansion had paid him much attention, but he had been so incredibly handsome, even as a young boy. I had taken one look at him and decided that he would be my older brother, much to the amusement of everyone around me. Later, when he was 10 years old, his family had come to take him back home. Now, over a decade had passed. We had kept in touch over the years, but such intimate gestures were highly inappropriate. The other day in the palace, I had acted purely out of momentary weakness and desperation. This time, I couldn't allow myself to drag him into my mess again. I am still betrothed to Gu Yuanxiao, and the rumors circulating about me are already terrible enough. You shouldn't have come to the Jiang mansion, brother, much less entered my private chambers. I looked at him, my eyes filled with guilt and remorse. Upon hearing my words, Fujitsu's face softened into a kind, reassuring smile. You call me brother. And that makes you my little sister. It is only right that an older brother takes care of his sister. Don't overthink it. But I still couldn't shake off my worries. The young Marquis saw us that day. If word gets out, it could be disastrous for you. I know, but it doesn't matter. Fujitsu helped me lean back against the headboard, tucking the quilt around me gently and naturally. Rest well. Don't let yourself fall ill again. As for ending the engagement, it is proving to be more complicated than I anticipated. But I promise you, I will make it happen. I will give you the outcome you desire. He moved back slightly, sitting on the stool beside my bed. His jade-like fingers picked up the bowl of medicine from the table. I reached out to take it from him, but instead, he brought the spoon to his lips, blowing on it gently to cool the bitter liquid, then held it out to me. He was actually going to feed me personally. I felt flustered and embarrassed. I can do it myself. Fujitsu gently dodged my hand, his voice warm and soft. Aren't you curious why the engagement hasn't been dissolved yet? Why? I had thought ending the betrothal would be straightforward. Gu Yuanxiao clearly loathed me now, and Princess Jiahe detested me as well. With Fujitsu's position as Grand Secretary, surely a single word to the Emperor would have resolved everything smoothly. But I never could have imagined that the person who would come to confront me instead would be Gu Yuanxiao himself. He hated me, resented me, and yet he refused to let me go. Why? Drink the medicine first, and then I'll tell you. With no other choice, I reluctantly opened my mouth and swallowed the bitter, acrid liquid. Fujitsu looked at me, a hint of surprise flickering across his face. You really have grown up. You're even drinking your medicine so obediently now. I felt a faint flush of embarrassment creep up my cheeks. I've already reached marriageable age. I had never liked taking medicine as a child. It was far too bitter, and I would always end up vomiting it back up. When I was little, it was my mother and my maids who would coax me into taking it. Later, that task had fallen to Fujitsu, and after that, it had been Gu. I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing my attention back on Fujitsu. Can you tell me now, brother? Fujitsu looked at me, his eyes filled with tender compassion. First, can you tell your brother why you're now able to drink such bitter medicine without a single complaint? In an instant, my eyes stung with tears. I quickly looked away, avoiding his gaze. It's nothing, I've just gotten used to it. That's all. Over the past 3 months, tormented by Gu Yuanxiao's sudden change of heart, I had already fallen ill with a cold twice. Drinking bitter medicine had become a regular part of my life. Slowly, I had come to realize it wasn't that I had never been able to stomach the bitter taste. It was simply that I had always been spoiled, always been coddled and indulged by others. Fujichu reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair away from my face, and didn't press the matter further. He spoke slowly, explaining the situation clearly. The marriage alliance between the Jiang and Jiyu families was originally arranged by the former Prime Minister, your grandfather, and the late Marquis. Both men were once the Emperor's teachers. That is why the Emperor is reluctant to intervene. After all, this was not a betrothal that he personally decreed. Furthermore, Jiyu Yuanxiao has sworn that he will never agree to dissolve the engagement. For the time being, the Emperor is at a loss as to how to proceed. He has merely stated that the two families should resolve the matter privately through discussion. As for Princess Jiahe, the Emperor has said that he will postpone granting her permission to marry until your situation with Jiyu Yuanxiao is resolved. The more I listened, the colder my heart grew. The Emperor's words were nothing more than empty platitudes, a mere token gesture to save face for the Jiang family. After all, my grandfather had been the former Prime Minister, and had once been the Emperor's mentor. If only none of this had ever happened, how had things come to such a pass? Now, the entire capital looked down on the Jiang family, trampling our reputation underfoot. Upon hearing my quiet lament, Fujichu let out a soft sigh. For now, the Jiang family can only place its hopes on Qingchang. Let us pray that he finally grows up, and stops acting so recklessly. Jiang Qingchang was my full younger brother. He had never been particularly gifted academically, and had always been determined to pursue a career in the military, much to the frustration of our parents. In the end, our father had been forced to drag him kicking and screaming to the Imperial Academy, assigning someone to keep a close eye on him to ensure he didn't get into any more trouble. The Emperor has not yet issued an edict formally betrothing Princess Jiahe to Jiyu Yuanxiao, and your wedding date has not yet arrived. There is still time. There will be a way out of this mess. Trust me. I looked at him, then slowly nodded my head. For now, he was the only one I could trust. I won't be able to come and see you as often from now on. Focus on getting well. Do you understand? If you ever need anything, send your maidservant to find me, or write me a letter. I nodded again, my throat too tight to speak. Fujichu gave me a few more gentle reminders, then rose to his feet, preparing to take his leave. As I watched his retreating figure, I spoke up suddenly. Thank you, Brother Fu. Fujichu's steps faltered. When he turned to look at me, his eyes held a faint, indistinct glimmer. Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. You know I never do favors without asking for something in return. I couldn't help but wonder if I was imagining things. Those last words seemed to carry a deeper, unspoken meaning. When we were children, Fujichu had never helped me for free. Sometimes his reward was a sugar figurine, other times a grasshopper he'd asked me to catch. Now, what would he ask of me? I racked my brain, but I couldn't fathom what Fujichu might want. In the end, I decided to stop overthinking it. After all, he would never put me in a difficult position. Once Fujichu had left, I sent for Chuanya to ask her about what had happened while I'd been ill. Chuanya's account matched Fujichu's exactly. She added that my mother had gently tried to dissuade him from staying to take care of me, citing the impropriety of a man and woman being alone together in my chambers. Fujichu had only replied that he was merely repaying the kindness of being fostered in the Jiang mansion all those years ago. That was why he'd left in such a hurry as soon as I'd woken up. It wasn't long before my parents came to visit me. My mother took my hand, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at me with heartache. My father's face was dark and stormy, his expression pensive as he stared at the floor. Suddenly, he looked up at me and asked, "Wanwan, what is your relationship with the Grand Secretary?" "What?" I stared at him, dumbfounded. My mother also looked up at him in surprise. My father fell silent for a moment, then spoke slowly, his voice heavy. "If you truly refuse to marry the young Marquis, then what about the Grand Secretary?" I cut him off hastily, my heart racing. "Father, what do you take your daughter for? And what do you take Lord Fu, the Grand Secretary, for?" My father pressed his lips together, his gaze on me growing extremely complicated. "Jiang Wn, you are the legitimate daughter of the Jiang family. You have a duty to uphold the honor of your birthright." I straightened my posture, my expression turning solemn. I knew exactly why my father had been so insistent on me marrying into the Marquis's mansion even as a concubine. Father, I understand your worries and fears perfectly well. The Jiang family is in a precarious position now. We have only managed to hold on this long because of our betrothal to the Marquis's mansion. You are afraid that once the engagement is broken, the Jiang family will be immediately swallowed up by the powerful clans of the capital, reduced to obscurity. That is why you want me to cling tightly to the young Marquis like a lifeline. But father, haven't you seen it? 13 years of friendship and affection between the young Marquis and me gone in an instant. He turned his back on me without a second thought, ready to marry Princess Jiahe instead. I did not give up without a fight. But the humiliation he subjected me to, how can I possibly help the Jiang family by marrying into the Marquis's mansion when he loathes and resents me so deeply? As I spoke, my mother patted my back gently, tears streaming down her face silently. If the bond between the young Marquis and me, forged over a lifetime of friendship, cannot be trusted, then how can you expect me to rely on the faint brother-sister affection I share with the Grand Secretary from our childhood? Right now, the Grand Secretary looks upon the Jiang mansion with leniency only because he was fostered here as a child. If you were to make such a presumptuous proposal to him, you would only offend him deeply. I could see that my father's resolve was wavering. I pressed on, my voice growing firmer. When grandfather arranged this marriage, he was promised that I would be the young Marquis's legal wife. Now that the Jiang family has fallen on hard times, the Marquis's mansion has gone back on their word, forcing me to accept the position of concubine. To endure such humiliation and not say a single word of protest, would that not make the entire capital laugh at the Jiang family, seeing us as nothing but spineless cowards? Father, Qingchang has grown up now. I swear to you, I will do everything in my power to help him restore the Jiang family to its former glory. This was the longest I had ever spoken to my father in the past 3 months. I had tried to bring up the topic of ending the engagement before, but each time, my father had flown into a rage. Back then, I had been heartbroken and angry, and our arguments had only grown more bitter and heated as time went on. Now that I had finally let go of my feelings for Jiyu Yuanxiao, I could see the situation clearly. I only hoped that my father would finally stop forcing me into a marriage I wanted no part of. My father stared at me, his lips pressed into a thin line. For a long while, he said nothing. Finally, he let out a deep, heavy sigh. Very well. We will wait and see what happens next. I felt a huge weight lift off my chest. Thank you for your understanding. Father. My father turned and walked out of the room, his shoulders hunched over in a posture of profound weariness and defeat. My mother squeezed my hand gently, her voice soft with reassurance. Wanwan, your father only did what he did because he was worried about the Jiang family. It was never his intention to be unkind to you. I nodded, my eyes stinging with tears. I know. Mother, I knew the reason behind my father's desperation all too well. After the incident that had cost grandfather his life, nearly half of the Jiang family's young talents and promising heirs had perished as well. My father had 2 older brothers, one a brilliant scholar, the other a valiant warrior, both men of exceptional talent and virtue, yet both had died in that fateful upheaval. My father had been the only remaining member of the main branch of the family left alive. He had been just 14 years old when he was forced to take over the reins of the crumbling Jiang mansion, stepping into the role of head of the family overnight. At that time, all the noble clans who had once been friendly with the Jiang family had been caught up in the fallout of the incident, and for a long time afterward, no one had dared to extend a helping hand to us for fear of being implicated. My father had walked a tightrope of survival back then, just as he was doing now. My mother let out a soft sigh, patting my hand gently. Come now, lie down and rest. Let's focus on getting you well again first. All right, illness comes like a mountain falling, but goes away like silk being woven slowly and painstakingly, coupled with the bitter cold of winter. My recovery was agonizingly slow. Fu Jichu sent a steady stream of tonics and restorative medicines to the mansion. Each time I saw the crates of precious herbs being carried in, I felt a pang of anxiety in my chest. My fears were not unfounded. Before long, Scandalous rumors about Fujichu and me began to spread throughout the capital like wildfire. People whispered that I was a seductress, using dark arts to bewitch the aloof and virtuous Grand Secretary, turning him into a lovesick fool. They called me a wanton woman, shamelessly carrying on an affair with the Grand Secretary while still betrothed to the young Marquis. They even claimed that I had been seen acting inappropriately intimate with the Grand Secretary in the palace. All the rumors painted me as a shameless temptress who had ensnared Fujichu with her wiles. When Chuanya told me about these malicious whispers, she was trembling with anger. "Miss, how dare they say such things about you? You did nothing wrong, nothing at all." To my own surprise, I felt a wave of relief wash over me when I heard her words. Thank goodness the rumors were only about me, not about Fujichu. But then, another thought crossed my mind, filling me with worry once more. With my reputation in such tatters now, it would undoubtedly affect Ching-Chang at the Imperial Academy. Chuanya, keep a close eye on what's happening with young master these next few days, I instructed her urgently. Ching-Chang had always been an impulsive boy. If he heard about these rumors, there was no telling what reckless thing he might do. I had just finished giving Chuanya her orders when a loud commotion erupted outside my door. "Young Marquis, you cannot enter this room. This is the young lady's private chambers. Get out of my way." My heart clenched in fear. It was Jiyu Yuanxiao. I shot Chuanya a quick, urgent look, signaling her to go find my mother at once. My father was not at home today. Jiyu Yuanxiao was clearly here in a rage. He could not possibly have good intentions. Chuanya had just slipped out through the side door when Jiyu Yuanxiao kicked my bedroom door open with a resounding crash. I closed my eyes immediately, pretending to be unconscious. Heavy footsteps thundered toward my bed. Jiyu Yuanxiao stood over me, then reached out to place his hand on my forehead. "Jiang Wn." He called my name, his voice sharp with suspicion as he tested to see if I was awake. Ever since I'd fallen ill, I'd been plagued by recurring bouts of high fever. I'd just taken my medicine a short while ago, and my body was now covered in a layer of sweat. His hand would surely feel the heat of my feverish skin. Even with my eyes closed tightly, I could feel the intensity of his gaze on my face, burning into my skin like a brand. I clenched my hands tightly beneath the quilt, silently praying that my mother would arrive soon. Jiyu Yuanxiao seemed to stare at me for an eternity, his hand lingering on my forehead, his thumb brushing back and forth gently across my skin. Suddenly, his hand moved downward, his fingers tracing a slow, deliberate path down my cheek. Jiyu Yuanxiao had practiced martial arts for years. His fingertips were calloused and rough against my skin, sending a shiver of revulsion down my spine. I heard him mutter under his breath, "Asleep, or pretending to be." There was a note of mocking amusement in his voice, as if he had already seen through my clumsy pretense. But I bit down hard on my lower lip, refusing to open my eyes. The scandalous rumors about Fujichu and me had only just spread throughout the capital, and here Jiyu Yuanxiao was, storming into my house in a rage. He must have thought that I was the one who had spread the rumors, and he had come here to confront me, to accuse me of deliberately disgracing him. Jiyu Yuanxiao let out a low, derisive chuckle that sent a chill down my spine. The hand that had been caressing my cheek suddenly moved, grabbing hold of the edge of the quilt, in one swift, brutal motion. He wrapped the quilt tightly around me and lifted me up in his arms, turning to stride out of the room. It was only then that my mother arrived, breathless and frantic. "Young Marquis," she cried out, rushing forward to block his path. "Wanwan is still gravely ill. What do you think you are doing, even though you are betrothed? This is highly inappropriate." Jiyu Yuanxiao cut her off with a cold, unfeeling voice that brooked no argument. "Wanwan's illness is severe. I am taking her back to the Marquis's mansion to recuperate, so that she will not be led astray by certain unscrupulous individuals and sully her reputation further." His words were loaded with meaning, his eyes glinting with malice as he glanced back at the direction of the main hall. Could it be that he thought Fujichu was the one who had spread the rumors? My mother was no match for Jiyu Yuanxiao's strength and resolve, in the time it took for her to utter those few desperate words. He had already carried me out of the inner courtyard of the Jiang mansion. By then, the household servants and maids had all rushed over, trying to block Jiu Yuanxiao's path, but none of them dared to get in his way for fear of incurring his wrath. If I were to wake up now, it would only lead to further humiliation. I could already imagine the salacious rumors that would spread about me being carried off kicking and screaming by the young marquis. It would be far better to continue pretending to be unconscious, and so, Jiu Yuanxiao forced his way into the Jiang mansion, abducted me, and carried me back to the marquis's mansion, to his private courtyard. He laid me gently on the bed in his chambers, then fetched a handkerchief and began to wipe the sweat from my forehead with surprisingly gentle movements. I thought I heard him let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. After that, he sent for the royal physician to re-examine me, taking my pulse and writing me a new prescription for medicine. At that moment, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of gratitude for being truly ill. It made my pretense all the more convincing. One by one, the servants and the physician left the room, leaving the space silent and still. But I knew Jiu Yuanxiao was still there. I could feel his gaze on me, heavy and tangible, as if he were trying to bore a hole through my closed eyelids. Suddenly, another hand landed on my face, his thumb brushing back and forth across my cheek in a gesture of tender, almost painful longing. Jiu Yuanxiao let out a long, trembling sigh. Wanwan, why did it have to be you? I couldn't see his face, but his voice was filled with such agony and turmoil that it sent a shiver down my spine. But what did he have to be in pain about? I was the one being tormented here. Jiu Yuanxiao sat down on the edge of the bed, taking my hand in his voice softened, returning to the deep, affectionate tone I remembered from our childhood. Wanwan, I loved you. I loved you so deeply, both in my past life and in this one. Jiu Yuanxiao pressed his face against the back of my hand, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to my skin, but in the next breath, his voice turned cold and bitter, filled with a seething hatred that made my blood run cold. But why did you betray me? 153 lives in the marquis's mansion, none of them survived, not a single one. Wanwan, I loved you so much. When you lay beside me at night, were you pretending to love me, or were you just thinking about how to pass on secret messages to our enemies? As he spoke, he let out a harsh, broken laugh that sent a chill down my spine. Wanwan, why did you do it? Hot, scalding tears fell onto the back of my hand, shocking me to my core. What on earth was he talking about? When had I ever betrayed him? When had the marquis's mansion been destroyed? Jiu Yuanxiao's voice cracked, his words coming out in a choked whisper, filled with a fierce, unyielding determination. The heavens must have taken pity on me. I was reborn, given a second chance. This time, I swear I will never let those traitors succeed. Not even you. Wanwan, do you know how I felt when I woke up and saw you again? I wanted nothing more than to kill you with my own hands, to make you pay for the blood of the marquis's mansion with your life. But when it came time to do it, I found that I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to hurt you. I'm so useless, so pathetically weak. I thought back to the first time Jiu Yuanxiao had seen me after he'd woken up from his injuries in the woods. Back then, I hadn't understood the roiling storm of emotions in his eyes. I'd only felt that he was a stranger, someone cold and terrifying who filled me with fear. Now I finally understood. At that moment, he had wanted to kill me. He had hated me with every fiber of his being. Jiu Yuanxiao tightened his grip on my hand, his voice growing cold and possessive once more, his words a vow that sent a shiver of dread down my spine. I will never allow you to break off our engagement. I will never give you the chance to betray me again. I will keep you by my side forever. Wanwan, you will never escape from me. My breath hitched in my throat, my chest heaving with shock and terror as I struggled to comprehend what I was hearing. Past life, present life, the annihilation of the marquis's mansion, betrayal. I think I finally understood, but beneath the overwhelming shock, there was only confusion. How could I have ever betrayed him? How could I? I needed an answer desperately, so I opened my eyes, fixed my gaze on the grief-stricken Jiu Yuanxiao, and spoke slowly. So this is what you meant by what I owe you. Jiu Yuanxiao's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. In the next instant, a tidal wave of rage crashed over me. Jiang Wn, you faked unconsciousness to trick me. His eyes blazed red, His expression twisted into one of bitter betrayal, as if this was just another one of my schemes. I sat up straight, pressing my question further. You think I betrayed you in your past life, so now you're taking your revenge on me, is that it? Jiu Yuanxiao stared at me, his lips pressed into a thin line, the cold radiating off him so intense it felt like he wanted nothing more than to slit my throat. I threw off the quilt and swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my bare feet touching the ice-cold floor. Jiu Yuanxiao's gaze narrowed sharply when he saw that. I took a step toward him, then another, my voice sharp with accusation. Why would I betray you? Tell me, for over a decade, you knew me better than anyone. You yourself once said I was too soft-hearted, that I always left people a way out unless they crossed an unforgivable line, even now after you betrayed me. After you decided to marry the princess, I only wanted to end our engagement. I never once thought of taking revenge on you, or destroying the entire Marquis's mansion. I don't even have the power to do that. I advanced step by step, and Jiu Yuanxiao retreated, backing away from me. What reason could there possibly be for me to betray you, to destroy the entire Marquis's mansion? Jiu Yuanxiao, what did you do? Jiu Yuanxiao stumbled backward, his back hitting the folding screen behind him with a loud thud. I stopped, standing 2 paces away from him, and looked up into his eyes, every word heavy with purpose. Jiu Yuanxiao, what did you do? Was it really all my fault? Was I truly the only one to blame? Jiu Yuanxiao's breath hitched, his composure cracking. Stop twisting my words. I took one final step forward, closing the distance between us. Am I twisting your words, or are you just guilty? I refused to back down. You can't condemn me to death just because I don't remember what happened in your past life. After all, you were the one who swore you'd never marry anyone but me, and now you've accepted the princess's affections with open arms. Jiu Yuanxiao, are you really that innocent? Jiu Yuanxiao let out a harsh, bitter laugh, then reached out and grabbed my shoulders. His grip wasn't tight, but it sent a jolt of fear through me, reminding me of how he'd hurt me before. But this time, I felt no fear. Only rage, burning, unbridled rage. He leaned down, his face inches from mine, his voice hoarse with suppressed fury as he hissed the question into my ear. What if it was because of that incident? My heart skipped a beat, stopping dead in my chest. The incident involving the former Prime Minister, my grandfather, had long since become a closely guarded secret. No one knew why the Jiang family had been brought to ruin. No one dared to speak of it, no one dared to ask. Not even my father knew the truth. Perhaps it was precisely because he didn't know that he'd been spared. Jiu Yuanxiao released my shoulders, stepping back and regaining his arrogant, condescending demeanor. Jiang Wn, now that you know, I'll stop beating around the bush. If you want the Jiang family to survive, you'll do as I say, and you'll forget about ending this engagement. I pressed my lips together tightly, my mind racing. I had no idea how much Jiu Yuanxiao knew about that incident. And I was certain he'd never tell me the full truth. Clashing with him now would only bring disaster upon the Jiang family. Reluctantly, I chose to yield. For now, I turned away from him, walked silently back to the bed, and lay down. Jiu Yuanxiao let out a cold snort of disdain, then turned and strode out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. I lay on the bed, replaying his words over and over in my mind. It was related to that incident. It was something that had driven me to betray him, to destroy the Marquis's mansion. Could it be that the Marquis's mansion had been the mastermind behind my grandfather's downfall? I couldn't think of any other reason. What other grudge could possibly be deep enough to make me betray the man I loved, to destroy everything he held dear? My thoughts were a jumbled mess, my mind spinning with confusion and fear. I didn't know what to do, but there was one small silver lining. I no longer held any hope for Jiu Yuanxiao. If I had, my heart would have been shattered into a million pieces by now. I let out a long, shaky breath and closed my eyes, trying to calm my racing heart. Now that I knew the truth, Jiu Yuanxiao would never let me leave the Marquis's mansion easily. The only thing I could do was focus on getting better. Only when I was strong enough would I have a chance to escape. But I was not expecting what happened 3 days later. Jiu Yuanxiao stormed into the room, his face dark with rage. Jiang Wn, you really are something else. His words were spat out through gritted teeth, oozing with venom. I stared at him, saying nothing. Gu Yuanxiao strode over to me in 3 long strides, then reached out and grabbed my chin, his fingers digging into my skin so hard it made my eyes water with pain. You have quite the loyal brother, don't you? For 3 days straight, he's been submitting memorials to the emperor, impeaching me left and right, demanding that I send you back to the Jiang mansion. My heart skipped a beat. I'd never imagined it would be Fujitsu. Gu Yuanxiao leaned in suddenly, his lips so close to mine I could feel his breath on my skin. Jiang Wn, Fujitsu is in love with you, isn't he? He hid it so well, I never even suspected. Tell me, do you think he'd still be going to such lengths to help you, if he knew you were already mine? A wave of terror washed over me, cold and clammy. What are you going to do? Gu Yuanxiao let out a low, menacing chuckle. Then crashed his lips down onto mine, kissing me roughly, savagely, as if trying to claim me. At the same time, his hands began to tear at my clothes. I struggled against him, kicking and pushing with all my strength, but it was like trying to move a mountain. My efforts were completely futile. Fear overwhelmed me, hot tears streaming down my face as my body trembled uncontrollably. In my panic, a memory suddenly flashed through my mind, a self-defense technique Gu Yuanxiao had once taught me. It had been back when Princess Jiaha's jealousy had driven her to target me repeatedly. Protected by the eldest princess, there was nothing Gu Yuanxiao could do to stop her, so instead, he taught me how to protect myself. Wanwan, you wear hairpins every day. He'd said, his voice earnest and sincere, if anyone ever tries to hurt you again, and I'm not there to protect you, don't be afraid, just remember this. He'd looked me in the eyes, his gaze filled with unwavering devotion. No matter what happens, I will never abandon you. You are the only woman I will ever marry. First, you must make your attacker let his guard down. Then, secretly grab your hairpin, hug him tightly, and stab it as hard as you can into his back. You have to be fast, fierce, accurate. Even if it doesn't kill him instantly, it will buy you enough time to escape. Gu Yuanxiao had already pushed me back onto the bed, his hands fisting in my clothes. In my desperation, my fingers fumbled for the hairpin in my hair and closed around it. As I wrapped one arm around Gu Yuanxiao's neck, pulling him closer to me, I raised my other hand, the hairpin clutched tightly in my fist. He seemed to sense something was wrong, his head snapped up. His eyes locking onto mine. In that split second, he grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight I heard a sharp crack, my bones screaming in agony. I refused to let go of the hairpin, my knuckles turning white as I tried with all my strength to drive it into his chest. Gu Yuanxiao stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief, then filled with a rage so intense it was terrifying. You used the technique I taught you, to kill me. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse, as if his throat had been crushed. I glared back at him, my eyes blazing with defiance. I never thought the first person I'd have to use it on would be you. Gu Yuanxiao's breath came in ragged gasps, as if my words had struck him like a knife to the heart. His red, bloodshot eyes turned wild with madness. He tightened his grip on my wrist. The pain so excruciating I screamed. I felt my fingers go limp, the hairpin slipping from my grasp as all the strength drained from my hand. He was going to cripple me, consumed by his rage. Gu Yuanxiao lost all semblance of reason, his words a snarl of pure hatred. I can't bring myself to kill you with my own hands, but I can make you die right here, on this bed. Rough, brutal kisses rained down on my face, my neck, as he tore at my clothes, his hands everywhere. I was trapped, there was no escape. Gu Yuanxiao rambled on, his voice a low, broken murmur against my skin. You betrayed me first. I loved you, I protected you, and you betrayed me. Jiang Wan, this time. I will never let you go. Just as I thought all hope was lost, a shrill voice suddenly cut through the air, filled with fury. Jiyu Jingyun, what do you think you're doing? My eyes flew open. For the first time in my life, I thought Princess Jiaha's voice sounded like music to my ears. The next moment, her furious face appeared in my blurred vision. She reached out to pull Gu Yuanxiao off me, but he threw her off with a single, violent shove. Gu Yuanxiao roared at her, his voice thunderous with rage. Get Get the hell out of here. The princess stumbled backward and fell to the floor, staring at Jiyu Yuanxiao in shock and disbelief. Tears streamed down her face as she shouted, Jiyu Yuanxiao, I am a princess. My mother is the eldest princess. My uncle is the emperor. How dare you treat me like this? The rage in Jiyu Yuanxiao's eyes faded slightly, a flicker of sanity returning to him. He closed his eyes tightly, his jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles bulging in his face. As if he was struggling to rein in his temper, finally, he pulled away from me. Climbing off the bed, I scrambled to sit up, yanking the torn remains of my clothes over my body, trying to cover myself as best I could. Jiyu Yuanxiao took a deep breath, then walked over to help the princess up, his voice softening into a tone of false gentleness. I'm sorry, Your Royal Highness. The princess glared at him, her eyes blazing with anger. No one has ever dared to lay a hand on me, not even you. And certainly not for the sake of a woman like Jiang Wn. With that, she turned her venomous gaze on me. Jiang Wn, you shameless hussy, you haven't even married into the Marquis's mansion yet, and you're already throwing yourself at him, begging for his attention. What will you be like once you're his wife? I lowered my eyes, my voice calm and steady, refusing to be goaded by her insults. You're absolutely right, Your Royal Highness. Why don't you go ask the Emperor to issue an edict annulling my engagement to the young Marquis? Otherwise, once I marry him, I'll make sure to fight you tooth and nail for his affection. You know very well how much he loved me once. It was the first time I'd ever dared to talk back to the princess. The first time I'd ever stooped to such a low level. But Jiyu Yuanxiao had left me with no choice. He'd forced me into this. The princess's face turned scarlet with rage as she screamed insults at me. Jiyu Yuanxiao just stood there, watching me, saying nothing to defend me. That only made the princess angrier. Just then, a voice called out from the doorway, the Jiang family has come to collect the young lady. When I heard that, the tight knot in my chest finally loosened, a wave of relief washing over me. The princess stepped past Jiyu Yuanxiao, glaring at me with pure malice. Well, what are you waiting for? Get out of here before I lose my temper. I glanced down at my torn, disheveled clothes, my face burning with humiliation. If I left like this, the entire world would see me in this state. It would be a disaster. The princess seemed to read my mind, a cruel smile spreading across her face. Now you're scared, too bad. I want everyone to see what a wanton, shameless woman you are. I warn all of you, no one is to give her a change of clothes. She will leave this mansion exactly as she is. Then she turned to Jiyu Yuanxiao, her voice sweet as honey. What do you think, Jingyun? Jiyu Yuanxiao shot me a cold, disdainful look. Perfect. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, refusing to move. Fujichu had been impeaching Jiyu Yuanxiao, forcing him to let me go. The content of those memorials must have been accusations against Jiyu Yuanxiao, painting him as the villain. But if I left the mansion in such a state, disheveled and half-dressed, the rumors would twist the truth completely. Everyone would blame me, not Jiyu Yuanxiao. And with that, the validity of Fujichu's impeachment would be called into question. It would ruin everything he'd worked so hard for. My mind raced, trying to think of a way out of this mess. Footsteps sounded in the corridor outside the door, and a familiar voice rang out, clear, calm, and unyielding. Is the young Marquis still refusing to release the young lady? Fujichu. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest, my eyes lighting up. But it was quickly extinguished by the humiliation of my current state. I didn't want him to see me like this, not like this. Wanwan. To my surprise, it was my mother who rushed into the room, not Fujichu. When she saw me, her eyes flooded with tears, her face turning pale with rage and heartache. She rushed over to me, throwing her thick, warm fox fur cloak over my shoulders, then turned and glared at Jiyu Yuanxiao, her gaze filled with hatred. I recognized that cloak. It was the one I'd picked out for Fujichu as a birthday gift. Fujichu was standing in the doorway, just beyond my mother's shoulder. In that moment, my nose stung with tears, my throat tightening with emotion. You abducted Wanwan to the Marquis's mansion under the pretense of taking care of her. My mother's voice trembled with suppressed fury as she glared at Jiyu Yuanxiao. You forbade anyone from the Jiang family to visit her. And now you've done this to her. The Jiang family may have fallen on hard times, we may no longer be as powerful as the Marquis's mansion, but we still have our dignity, our integrity. We will never let this matter rest. All the calm and strength I had forced myself to maintain crumbled into dust in that moment. My mother wrapped her arms around me and pulled me toward the door. Jiyu Yuanxiao spoke up suddenly, his voice cold and cutting, laced with a thinly veiled threat. Jiang Qingchang will be sitting for the imperial examination next year, won't he? My mother and I both froze in our tracks. She turned her head, her eyes blazing with anger as she shot back. Your reach is truly far, young Marquis. My entire body went rigid. I could feel his eyes boring into my back, heavy and menacing. I knew this wasn't a threat aimed at my mother, it was a warning for me, a warning to keep my mouth shut when I returned home, otherwise, Qingchang would pay the price for my recklessness. Just then, a tall, elegant figure stepped into the doorway, standing there like a bright moon shining through the clear autumn breeze. Matters concerning the imperial examination are hardly something the young Marquis needs to concern himself with, Fujichu said, his tone light and indifferent. Yet managing to block every single one of Jiyu Yuanxiao's veiled threats with that one sentence, the two men locked eyes, a silent battle of wills unfolding between them, neither willing to back down. I squeezed my mother's hand tightly, glancing over at Fujichu. Let's go, I whispered. Fujichu's gaze finally fell on me, but he looked away almost immediately, as if he couldn't bear to see me in such a state. All right, he replied, his voice betraying a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. As we stepped out of the Marquis's mansion, my mother thanked Fujichu profusely. He responded with his usual gentle courtesy. The Jiang family once took me in when I had nowhere else to go. I have always regarded Wanwan as my own little sister. Helping her is only right. With that one sentence, he put an end to all the scandalous rumors that had been circulating about us. It was nothing more than the affection between an older brother and his younger sister, nothing inappropriate, nothing untoward. After that, Fujichu watched silently as my mother and I boarded the carriage and drove away. Inside the carriage, my mother looked at me, her eyes filling with tears all over again. After a long while, she finally spoke, her voice firm and resolute. This engagement, it must be broken. No matter what it takes. Mother, I'm going to sleep for a while. Wake me when we get home, I said, closing my eyes. Memories of what had just happened played on a loop in my mind. Unbidden and unwelcome, my hands clenched into tight fists beneath the warm cloak. When we arrived home, I heard that my father had rushed into the palace as soon as he'd heard what had happened, going to see the emperor in the middle of the night. My mother sat with me by my bed for half the night, until I finally pretended to fall asleep to make her leave. I couldn't sleep, but I didn't want to worry her any more than I already had. Every time I closed my eyes, those horrifying images flashed before them, filling me with a primal sense of fear and disgust. I couldn't help but think, if Princess Jiahe hadn't arrived when she did, if Jiyu Yuanxiao had truly intended to kill me, what would have become of me? For the first time in my life, my hatred for Jiyu Yuanxiao reached its peak. If he hated me so much, he could have killed me quickly, cleanly. Instead, he hid behind his so-called inability to lay a hand on me, choosing instead to torment me, to humiliate me in the worst possible way. A soft tapping sound suddenly came from my window lattice. Then, a familiar voice called out, gentle and low, Wanwan. In the soft glow of the moonlight, a tall, slender shadow was cast on the window. It was Fujichu. I thought I should come, he said quietly. But if you don't want me here, I'll leave at once. The shadow stood there motionless outside the window, not daring to overstep a single boundary. I knew he must have heard what had happened. For a long while, I said nothing, and Fujichu did not leave. I could hear the wind howling outside, growing stronger by the minute. It sounded like it was going to snow. I'm fine, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. You should go back, it's cold outside. The shadow didn't move, he just said, sleep well. I didn't reply, I didn't know what to say. I just stared at his shadow on the window. He turned slightly, the wind blowing his hair, making it flutter gently in the night breeze. The wind outside sounded so strong. Before I knew it, watching his shadow there in the moonlight, I drifted off to sleep. For the first time that night, those terrifying images did not haunt my dreams. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. Chuanya told me that it had snowed all night long, with strong winds blowing so hard that the corridors were completely covered in a thick layer of snow. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window, throwing it open. On the windowsill, sitting there all alone, was a tiny grasshopper woven from straw. Beneath the window, a single set of footprints stretched all the way to the gate of the courtyard. Fujichu had stood guard outside my window all night long. I told Chuanya to clear away the footprints, before anyone else could see them. She always obeyed my orders without question, never asking for any explanations. I held the tiny straw grasshopper in my hand, then carefully placed it inside my dressing table. Tucking it away in a safe place, after lunch, Chuanya came to me to report on the latest news from outside the mansion. Grand Secretary Fu has submitted memorials to the emperor, impeaching the young marquis for his actions, and with Master going into the palace to see His Majesty, invoking the memory of the late Prime Minister, the emperor has issued an edict ordering the young marquis to remain confined to his mansion to reflect on his crimes. As for the matter of annulling the engagement, the emperor did not mention it at all. I nodded slowly, not surprised by this news. And what about Ching-Chang? How is he? Master ordered that none of this news should reach young Master's ears, so he still doesn't know anything about what happened. That's a relief, I sighed. After thinking for a moment, I said, prepare paper and ink for me. I need to write a letter to Grand Secretary Fu, right away, miss. When it came to that incident, the one that had destroyed the Jiang family, the only person I could think of to help me, the only person I trusted, was Fujichu. I wrote a short letter, then sent Chuanya to deliver it to Fujichu's mansion in person. Jiyu Yuanxiao would never let me out of his sight. He must have people watching my every move, even here in the Jiang mansion. Until I could figure out who his spies were, I couldn't afford to reveal anything important. The letter I wrote was nothing more than a simple note of thanks and a polite inquiry after his health, but I knew Fujichu would understand the hidden meaning behind my words. After resting at home for a few days, I saw that the sun was shining brightly outside. So I decided to take Chuanya and the other maids out for a walk in the city. Even though I wore a veil to cover my face, some people still recognized Chuanya, whispering and pointing at me as we passed by. I ducked into a clothing store. Once inside, I changed into a plain maid's dress, then told Chuanya's younger sister to put on my clothes and veil, and continue walking around the city pretending to be me, with the veil covering her face. No one who didn't know me well would notice the difference in our figures, and with Chuanya accompanying her, drawing attention to them, no one would spare a second glance at me as I slipped away unnoticed. I hurried to a small pastry shop located in the west of the city. As soon as I stepped inside, I saw Fujichu's personal attendant waiting for me by the door. He nodded at me silently, then led me through a side door into the backyard of the shop, in the quiet little courtyard. Fujichu was already waiting for me, sitting at a stone table with a pot of tea in front of him. Only then did I allow myself to relax, a wave of relief washing over me. Fujichu looked at me, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. It's always nerve-wracking the first time you do something sneaky. You'll get used to it. I sat down opposite him. He pushed a plate of pastries toward me across the table. These are freshly baked cloud pastries. Try them and see if you like them. I picked up a small pastry and took a bite, nodding in approval. They're delicious. Fujichu poured me a cup of floral tea. You went to all this trouble to sneak out and see me. What is it that you need? In the letter I'd sent to him, I'd mentioned this pastry shop in passing, and had Chuanya send along a box of pastries with the letter. Most people didn't know this, but this pastry shop actually belonged to Fujichu, even though he didn't have a sweet tooth at all. I never sent him sweet treats normally. He was always so attentive, so perceptive. I knew he would pick up on the hidden message in my letter, and make the necessary arrangements for us to meet here in secret. And sure enough, he had. I put down the pastry in my hand, glancing warily around the courtyard to make sure no one was listening. Fujichu must have noticed my unease, because he said, "Don't worry, Fengjian has already checked the entire area. There are no spies watching us." "I have something to ask you, brother," I said, leaning forward slightly and lowering my voice to a whisper. It must be something important. Then, I nodded. Fujichu fixed his eyes on me, his expression turning serious as he took a slow sip of his tea. Go on, then, tell me what it is. Wait a minute, I thought to myself. He doesn't like drinking floral tea like this. Does he? I pushed that thought aside, focusing on the matter at hand. I lowered my voice even further, so that only he could hear me. I need your help, brother. I need you to help me investigate what really happened that year, the incident that destroyed the Jiang family. Fujichu's eyes narrowed sharply, a flash of warning in his gaze. Why do you want to dig into the past? That one look stripped me bare, making me feel completely transparent. All the carefully prepared words I'd rehearsed in my mind vanished without a trace, leaving me stammering awkwardly. Unable to articulate my thoughts clearly, Fujichu tapped his index finger lightly on the surface of the stone table twice. The sound was soft, yet it sent a wave of pressure washing over me, making my heart race. Tell me the truth, Wanwan, he said, his voice firm and unyielding. I hesitated, unsure of how to begin, unsure if I should even tell him the truth at all. Seeing the conflict on my face, Fujichu softened his tone, his voice gentle and coaxing. Let me ask you this instead. Who has been keeping an eye on you? Who has been threatening you? I bit my lip, then replied in a low voice, the young Marquis. And this has something to do with that incident from all those years ago. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Fujichu fell silent for a moment, his expression turning colder, more serious. You want to investigate this matter. Is it because of him, or is it for the sake of the Jiang family? Both, I answered honestly. That single sound was enough to make me realize that Fujichu was displeased, his tone laced with a hint of annoyance, but I couldn't understand why he was suddenly upset. We stared at each other in silence for a long moment. Finally, Fujichu let out a soft sigh, the tension in his shoulders relaxing slightly. Let me rephrase the question. Do you still have feelings for Jiyu Yuanxiao? I shook my head vigorously, my voice firm and resolute. No, absolutely not. Those two words seemed to please him, a faint smile returning to his lips as the coldness in his eyes melted away, replaced by his usual lazy, relaxed demeanor. Since Wanwan has asked for my help personally, he said, pouring me another cup of tea, how could I possibly refuse? Then, his tone shifted, becoming playful and teasing as he added, although, what kind of reward will I get for helping you this time? I thought for a moment, then looked up at him, my eyes earnest. Anything you want. Whatever it is, if I have it, it's yours. Fujichu raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Anything, anything, I repeated, nodding firmly. He looked at me, a warm, amused smile lingering in his eyes as he said, good. With that cryptic response, he fell silent, turning his attention back to his cup of tea as if he'd developed a sudden fondness for the floral brew, sipping it slowly and thoughtfully. Seeing that he had no intention of saying anything more on the matter, I spoke up, rising to my feet. I should head back now, brother. The young Marquis has people watching me closely. I'm afraid if I stay away too long. It's all right, Fujichu interrupted me, waving a hand dismissively. He has more important things to worry about right now. He won't be paying any attention to you. What do you mean? Fujichu just smiled mysteriously, refusing to elaborate. Let's just say I've found him a little distraction to keep him occupied. Jiyu Yuanxiao was confined to his mansion. What kind of distraction could Fujichu possibly have found for him? No matter how much I pressed him for answers, Fujichu just shook his head, remaining tight-lipped on the subject. An hour later, after we'd finished our tea and pastries, I stood up to take my leave. Fujichu gestured to Fengjian, who was standing quietly by the door. I'll have Fengjian disguise himself and take up a position as a guard in your courtyard, from now on. If you need to contact me, you can just tell him directly. That way, you won't have to go through all this trouble to sneak out and meet me again. Given the current circumstances, I had no choice but to accept his kind offer, though I couldn't help but worry. I was already in Fujichu's debt so many times over. How would I ever repay him for all he'd done for me? On the way back to the mansion, I learned from Fengjian that ever since he'd received my letter, Fujichu had come to this pastry shop every single day, waiting for me to arrive. I hadn't specified a date in the letter, afraid that it would be too obvious. I'd never imagined that he would wait for me like this, day after day. In that moment, I thought back to the night he'd stood guard outside my window, watching over me as I slept. It seemed that he had always been this way, quietly caring for me, looking out for me, in ways I had never even realized. Curiosity got the better of me. So I asked Fengjian, what exactly did the Grand Secretary do to distract the young Marquis? But Fengjian just shook his head, remaining tight-lipped, refusing to reveal anything more. It wasn't until a few days later that I finally found out the truth. Princess Jiahe had been visiting the Marquis's mansion every single day, trying her best to seduce Jiyu Yuanxiao and trick him into sleeping with her, so that she could force the emperor to issue an edict formalizing their betrothal as soon as possible. In the past, hearing news like this would have broken my heart into a million pieces, but now, I felt absolutely nothing, no sadness, no anger, not even a flicker of jealousy. I just couldn't help but wonder. If that was the case, then had Princess Jiahe's timely arrival at the Marquis's mansion that day also been arranged by Fujichu? The next day, I heard a piece of news that left me filled with confusion and unease. Jiyu Yuanxiao had been attacked the previous night while confined to his mansion. Someone had put a sack over his head and beaten him black and blue. Jiyu Yuanxiao was an accomplished martial artist, not to mention, this had happened inside the heavily guarded Marquis's mansion. How could anyone have possibly managed to sneak in, attack him, and escape without being caught? A vague sense of dread began to creep over me. That dread turned into cold, hard certainty when I saw Qingchang standing in front of me, a proud smirk on his face. "What are you doing back here?" I exclaimed, my voice rising in panic. Qingchang had been looking happy and triumphant, but my sharp tone made him blink in surprise, his smile fading slightly. "Elder sister, you went through all that terrible humiliation, and no one told me anything. You all kept it from me," he protested, his cheeks puffing up with indignation. "So he did know. He knew everything." I grabbed Qingchang by the arm, my heart pounding with fear as I demanded, "Did you do it? Did you sneak into the Marquis's mansion and beat Jiyu Yuanxiao?" At my words, Qingchang's eyes lit up with pride, his eyebrows shooting up as he said, "Elder sister is so smart, you guessed it right away. Mph, how dare he bully you like that? Did he really think the Jiang family had no one left to defend us?" Qingchang looked at me expectantly, his eyes shining brightly, clearly waiting for me to praise him for his bravery. Instead, I raised my hand and smacked him lightly on the head, my voice filled with anger and frustration. "You idiot, you've gone and gotten us into serious trouble." Jiyu Yuanxiao was not a man who could be easily ambushed like that. He must have known exactly what Qingchang was planning to do, and he'd let him do it, setting a trap for us. It was even possible that he'd been the one to deliberately leak news of what had happened to me to Qingchang in the first place. Knowing full well that my hot-headed little brother would rush to my defense, it was all a trap, a warning for me. And now, Jiyu Yuanxiao would undoubtedly use this as an excuse to bring his men to the Jiang mansion and demand justice for his attack. He was going to come here and accuse us of assaulting him, bringing the full force of the Marquis's mansion down upon us. My face darkened instantly. Seeing my expression, Qingchang looked at me nervously, his voice trembling slightly. "Elder sister, did I get us into trouble? But I swear, no one saw me sneak into the Marquis's mansion, and Jiyu Yuanxiao didn't even realize it was me when I beat him up." I shot him a sharp glare, too anxious to explain the gravity of the situation. I grabbed him by the arm and pushed him toward the door. "Get back to the academy at once. We'll talk about this when father gets home. If anyone asks about you, just say," a panicked voice cut me off mid-sentence. "Miss, men from the Marquis's mansion are here." My heart sank like a stone. Qingchang's eyes blazed with resolve as he tried to stride out the door. "I take full responsibility for what I did. I'll go face him." I rushed forward and grabbed him, so furious I wanted to slap some sense into him. "Did all those years of studying teach you nothing? He set a trap for you, and you jumped right into it. Jiang Qingchang, leave for the academy, now, immediately. I don't care how you do it, run if you have to. And if anyone asks, you will swear on your life that you never came home." "Elder sister, G.O. I had just managed to sneak Ching Chang out through the side door when the men from the Marquis's mansion arrived at the main gate. "Miss Jiang," one of them said coldly, stepping into the courtyard, "the young Marquis requests your presence." I took a deep breath. Straightening my robes and composing my features into a mask of calm, "Lead the way." In the main hall of the Jiang mansion, Jiyu Yuanqiao sat arrogantly in the seat of honor, his face dark with rage, fresh bruises blooming across his jaw and cheek. My parents sat below him, their expressions grim and tense. When they saw me enter, my mother hurried over to me, her hands trembling as she pulled me down to sit beside her. Jiyu Yuanqiao lifted his eyes slowly, his gaze sweeping coldly over the room before settling on my father. "One person is missing," he said, his voice dripping with icy disdain. My father forced a conciliatory smile. "My son is still at the Imperial Academy, studying." Jiyu Yuanqiao raised an eyebrow, a mocking smirk tugging at his lips. "Is he?" With that, he reached into his sleeve and pulled out a jade pendant, slamming it down onto the table with a sharp crack. My heart clenched into a tight knot of fear. Jiyu Yuanqiao smiled, a cold, cruel thing, as he spoke. "I remember this pendant very well. It belongs to Jiang Qingchang. He never takes it off his person. Once, he even boasted to me that it was a matching pair with his elder sister's, a talisman to keep them both safe." His eyes locked onto mine, his gaze burning with malice. "Today, in my mansion, I was set upon by an attacker. In the chaos of the struggle, this pendant was torn from his person." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, heavy with accusation. "Is the Jiang family going to shield their son from justice?" That one simple question hung in the air like a death sentence, pressing down on everyone present until it felt like we could barely breathe. My father forced a strained smile, his face stiff with tension. "Young Marquis, there must be some misunderstanding. My son has been at the academy this entire time. It is possible that someone stole his pendant and is now using it to frame the Jiang family. Do you have any proof of that?" Jiyu Yuanqiao challenged, his tone sharp. "If the young Marquis does not believe me, you are welcome to search the Jiang mansion from top to bottom. At the same time, you may send men to the academy to verify whether my son has ever left its grounds." Jiyu Yuanqiao let out a low, derisive snort. "Very well, I accept your proposal." My hands, hidden beneath the sleeves of my robe, clenched into tight fists. "Ching Chang, don't let me down. Please don't let me down." A quarter of an hour later, the men who had searched the mansion returned, reporting that there was no sign of Jiang Qingchang anywhere on the premises. An hour after that, the men who had been sent to the academy arrived back at the mansion, and trailing behind them were two figures. One was my younger brother, covered in cuts and bruises, and the other was a boy I did not recognize. A cold wave of dread washed over me. As soon as he entered the hall, Ching Chang rushed to my father, his voice loud with indignation. "Father, I refuse to study there any longer. All the other students bully me. I can't take it anymore, so I fought back." My father slammed his fist down on the table, his face turning crimson with rage. "You fool." Suddenly, Ching Chang's eyes fell on the jade pendant lying on the table. He let out a surprised gasp. He picked up the pendant, then reached into his own pocket and pulled out an identical one, holding them both up side by side. "Elder sister, did you lose your pendant?" Not only my parents, but I myself was stunned into silence. I shook my head quickly, my mind racing a mile a minute as I stood up, my voice ringing out clearly and firmly. "As you can see, young Marquis, my brother is innocent. This is nothing but a malicious frame-up." Ching Chang looked at us all in confusion, his brow furrowing. "Frame-up? What are you all talking about?" My mother, who had been sitting quietly beside me, suddenly jumped to her feet, her voice shrill with anger. "Which cowardly scoundrel dared to frame my son like this? And another thing," Ching Chang added, turning to glare at Jiyu Yuanqiao, his eyes blazing with youthful fury. "You're going to marry the princess. What about my elder sister? Are you going to betray her like this? Fine, all of you have been keeping things from me. Letting my elder sister suffer such terrible humiliation while I knew nothing about it." He stared at Jiyu Yuanqiao with pure hatred, his hands curling into fists at his sides, clearly ready to charge at him and throw another punch. My father hurried forward and pulled him back, clamping a hand over his mouth to silence him. As you can see, young Marquis, my father said quickly, shooting my brother a warning look. My son is innocent. Gu Yuanxiao stood up slowly, brushing imaginary dust off his robes with a dismissive flick of his hands. It seems I have come to the wrong conclusion. Then, however, his eyes narrowed, his tone turning cold and unforgiving. Jiang Qingchang instigated a fight at the Imperial Academy. Such behavior cannot go unpunished. With that one casual sentence, he shattered any hope Qingchang had of ever returning to the academy to continue his studies. And as for any other academy in the capital, they would all be too afraid of offending the powerful Marquis's mansion to ever accept him as a student. As soon as the men from the Marquis's mansion had left, my father turned on Qingchang in a rage, slapping him hard across the face. Look at the mess you've made, he roared. I don't care. I don't want to study there anyway. Qingchang shot back defiantly, clutching his stinging cheek. I want to, you ungrateful brat, my father shouted, raising his hand to strike him again. In the end, Qingchang was punished by being forced to kneel in the ancestral hall to atone for his crimes. That night, I took some food and went to the ancestral hall to see him. He was kneeling there, his posture slouched and dejected, his face covered in dust and tears. Elder sister, he mumbled, looking up at me with a guilty expression. Tell me everything, I said, sitting down beside him and handing him the food. Qingchang took the food eagerly, shoveling it into his mouth as he spoke, his voice filled with pride. Have to say, I'm pretty clever, right? As soon as I left the mansion, I realized I'd lost my pendant, so I rushed back to the academy as fast as I could, then picked a fight with the biggest bully there. When the academy master asked me about it, I told him they'd been bullying me non-stop, and I'd finally had enough. I wasn't going to study there anymore, so I might as well get my revenge. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to explain the part one was most curious about. What about the other jade pendant? Where did that come from? There was no way he could have gotten an identical pendant made in just 1 hour, and knowing my brother, he would never have been clever enough to think of such a scheme on his own. That's Shen Yaro's, Qingchang said, nodding toward the boy who had come back with him. He's my roommate at the academy. He has a younger sister who's been very sick since she was little. When I told him my pendant was a lucky charm that kept me safe, he had someone make an exact copy of it for his sister to wear. Who would have thought it would come in handy like this? He added with a grin. And hey, the whole scheme was his idea. He's not exactly good at his studies, but he's brilliant when it comes to thinking up tricks like this. We're best friends. He suddenly grabbed my hand, his eyes lighting up with hope as he shook my arm pleadingly. Elder sister, can you beg the Grand Secretary to let Shen Yaro come with me, please? I stared at him, speechless. He pouted, clinging to my arm and giving me his best puppy dog eyes. Please, elder sister, now that we've both been kicked out of the academy, the other schools won't take him either, please. The Grand Secretary likes you so much, he'll definitely do it if you ask him. Just talk to him for me, please. My heart skipped a beat, a rush of heat rising to my cheeks. Why you? What nonsense are you talking about? Qingchang looked at me in confusion, his brow furrowing. Isn't it true? Ever since he was little and lived at our house, he only ever wanted to play with you. He never even looked at me twice. Oh right, he added, his face falling suddenly as a new worry crossed his mind. Father will never agree to this, will he? I sighed quietly. I knew my father would never approve. Just wait and see, I said, patting his hand reassuringly. On my way back to my room from the ancestral hall, I thought long and hard about our situation. I had come to the bitter realization that there was probably no way to annul my engagement to Gu Yuanxiao. The wedding date was now less than 2 months away, and with each passing day, it felt like our fate was being sealed tighter and tighter. If I really had no choice but to marry him and enter the Marquis's mansion, if Gu Yuanxiao truly intended to take his revenge on the entire Jiang family, then the very least I could do was protect Qingchang. He would never be safe here in the capital. The only way to keep him alive was to send him far away from all this, and if father refused to agree to my plan, then I would have to act without his permission. I would beg forgiveness later. The next day, under Feng Jian's escort, I went to visit Fujichu. I had two reasons for going. First, to ask about the progress of his investigation into that incident from all those years ago, and second, to beg for his help once again. Fujitsu had already done far more for me than could ever be justified by a simple brother-sister bond, but I dared not dwell on what that might mean. In his study, Fujitsu was sitting at his desk, his head bowed as he reviewed official documents. He looked so calm and composed, like a figure straight out of a painting. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he did not look up. "You're here," he said, his voice soft and warm. Perfect timing. "Help me grind the ink." I walked over to stand beside him, picking up the ink stick and starting to grind it slowly against the inkstone. The room was completely silent, save for the soft scratch of the ink stick against the stone and the rustle of paper as he turned the pages of the documents in front of him. I did not know how long we stayed like that, lost in our own thoughts, the world outside fading away. Eventually, a gust of wind blew through the open window, carrying with it the faint flutter of snowflakes. I hurried over to close the window, turning around just in time to see Fujitsu looking at me, a faint, amused smile playing on his lips. "Wanwan, do you know what it means to close both the doors and windows on a bright, sunny day?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "What does it mean?" I replied, blinking in confusion. I had only closed the window to keep the cold wind from disturbing him. Fujitsu crooked a finger at me, beckoning me to come closer. I walked over to him, my heart beating a little faster than usual. Suddenly, he reached out and took my hand, pulling me gently toward him. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it firmly. "Don't move," he said softly. "You got ink on your fingers." Carefully, gently. He took a handkerchief and began to wipe the smudge of ink from the tip of my little finger, his touch light and tender against my skin. "It means," he said, his voice low and husky as he continued to wipe my finger, "that what happens in this room is not meant for the ears of others." He was answering my earlier question. For some reason, his words sent a rush of heat flooding to my cheeks, and the spot where his fingers touched my skin felt like it was burning. After he had wiped away the last trace of ink, Fujitsu did not let go of my hand. Instead, he lifted his eyes to meet mine, his clear, light-colored pupils reflecting my flustered, nervous expression perfectly. "Why have you come to see me this time, Wanwan?" he asked, his voice soft and gentle. I want to ask you for another favor," I stammered, my voice coming out a little shaky. "I want you to help Ching-chang get into the military camp." Fujitsu smiled, a warm, affectionate smile that made my heart skip a beat. "You ask for so many things, Wanwan, and yet I have not received a single one of the rewards you promised me. What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. As soon as the words left my lips, Fujitsu suddenly tightened his grip on my hand, pulling me forward and into his arms in one swift, unexpected motion. I landed gently on his lap, his arm wrapping securely around my waist to hold me in place. My heart began to pound wildly against my chest, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "G-Grand Secretary," I exclaimed, my face burning with embarrassment as I tried to squirm away. "Sure," he whispered, pressing his lips against my ear, his warm breath fanning against my skin and sending a shiver of pleasure down my spine. I tried to pull away, but his chest was solid and warm behind me, leaving me with nowhere to go. I tried to escape, but his arm was locked firmly around my waist, holding me close to him. I couldn't help but wonder, had I made a mistake in coming to him like this? His voice, low and rich like fine wine, washed over me, sending a wave of warmth through my body. "You used to always call me Brother Fu," he murmured, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of my ear. His voice was like a spell, sweet, tempting, impossible to resist. "Brother Fu," I whispered, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop them. When I heard my own voice, I was shocked by how tight and breathless it sounded, how soft and intimate. Like, the thought alone was enough to make my face burn with shame. Fujitsu let out a low, rumbling laugh, the sound vibrating against my back and sending another shiver down my spine. He sounded thoroughly amused. "Wanwan," he said, his voice soft and tender as he rested his chin lightly on my shoulder. "I have been waiting for you to come to me, for a very long time." I froze completely, at a loss for words. You know very well, he said softly, his breath brushing against my ear, that I never help anyone without asking for something in return. Now is your chance to refuse me. Once you agree, there's no going back. In that moment, everything clicked into place. Fujitsu could not have spent all these days investigating and found nothing. He had simply been waiting for me to come to him willingly. A flood of memories suddenly rushed into my mind, voices echoing in my head. Father's cautious question, what exactly is your relationship with the Grand Secretary? Gu Yuanxiao's mocking accusation, Fujitsu is in love with you, isn't he? He hid it so well. Qing Chang's innocent observation, the Grand Secretary likes you so much. If I still couldn't see the truth now, I would truly be as foolish as a pig. I turned my head abruptly, my nose accidentally brushing against Fujitsu's jaw. He stiffened all over. I felt the hand around my waist tighten slightly. I scrambled to apologize, my voice trembling with fluster. I am so sorry, we were too close, far too close. Fujitsu's eyes darkened, his voice low and intense. Have you made your decision? I nodded slowly, under his unwavering gaze. I gently pried his fingers off my waist and stood up, my movements deliberate and slow. Fujitsu's eyes never left me for a single moment. I pressed my lips together tightly, my mind waging a fierce war with itself. Finally, I forced the words out, my voice barely audible. I'm sorry. The warmth in Fujitsu's eyes faded inch by inch, replaced by a coldness that made my heart ache. You need to understand, the Jiang family cannot defeat the Marquis's mansion, not even close. I lowered my eyes, my throat tight with emotion. I know, but I lifted my head, looking straight into his eyes, my voice firm and resolute. I don't want to take advantage of your feelings for me. If all he wanted was the Jiang family's power, or my body, I could have closed my eyes and let him have his way. But what he wanted was my heart, my love. I knew exactly how it felt to have your heart broken by the person you loved. If I couldn't return his feelings, then the kindest thing I could do was not give him any false hope. He was like the moon, high above the world, pure and untouchable, shining with a cold, brilliant light. I dared not imagine what would happen if the moon fell from the sky, and he did not deserve to fall for someone like me. I let out a long, shaky breath. I will find another way to solve all these problems. Thank you for everything you've done for me these past few days, Grand Secretary. I bowed slightly to him, then turned and headed for the door. Just as I reached the threshold, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Before I could react, I was pulled back into a broad, warm embrace. Fujitsu held me tightly, pressing me against his chest as if he never wanted to let go. Don't do this, Wanwan. Please don't push me away like this, he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. He held me for a long, long time. When he finally let go, I saw that his eyes were bloodshot. Grand Secretary, I began, my voice catching in my throat. He raised a hand, gently pressing his finger against my lips to silence me. Fujitsu managed a small, pale smile. Wanwan, I don't ask for much. I only ask that you give me a chance, just one chance. Try, for me, will you? Try to accept him, try to learn to love him. If it works out, we will stay together for the rest of our lives. If it doesn't, his voice softened, filled with a quiet determination that broke my heart. It will be my choice, my regret. It has nothing to do with you. When I heard those words, a sharp pain stabbed at my heart. Fujitsu lowered his head, cupping my face in his hands. His touch so gentle it was as if he was handling a priceless treasure. Can you do that for me? He asked, his eyes searching mine for any sign of hope. Looking into his earnest, pain-filled eyes, my resolve crumbled completely. I felt myself being drawn in, like a moth to a flame. I nodded slowly, yes. Fujitsu and I sat down facing each other, finally getting down to business. Getting Qing Chang into the military camp won't be difficult. I can make it happen, he said. His tone calm and confident. But there's one thing you need to think carefully about. Do you still want to continue investigating that incident from all those years ago? Fujitsu then told me the truth about my grandfather and the late Marquis Gu. My grandfather and the late Marquis had been classmates in their youth. At 18, my grandfather had topped the imperial examinations and become the youngest Zhuangyuan in history. At the same age, The late Marquis had joined the army and fought his way up from the ranks. Back then, my grandfather's political career had been flourishing, and he had elevated the Jiang family to unprecedented heights of power and prestige. A few years later, the late Marquis had led his troops to reclaim several lost cities and returned triumphantly to the capital. Both men had been granted the title of Marquis and appointed as prime ministers. When they met again after their great achievements, they had decided to betroth their children to each other, sealing their alliance with a marriage. But their good fortune did not last long. After decades of serving as a government official, my grandfather had made countless political enemies, and after years of fighting on the battlefield, the late Marquis had accumulated numerous hidden injuries that had slowly worn down his health. When the new emperor ascended the throne, both men had suddenly fallen from power and become gravely ill. At the very same time, a powerful feudal lord from a distant region had led his army to the capital, threatening to usurp the throne. In the chaos that followed, various political forces had risen up to take their revenge on those who had once opposed them. The Marquis's mansion had managed to survive because they held the military power in their hands, but the Jiang family, who had always been known for their integrity and scholarly pursuits, had no such protection. They had ultimately been unable to withstand the backlash from their enemies. During that fateful incident, my grandfather had entered the palace to meet with the emperor and had never come out again. Nearly half of the young, talented members of the Jiang family had been killed in various places, and the rest had been forced to flee for their lives. Afterward, the emperor had publicly declared that my grandfather had sacrificed his life to save him. Preserving my grandfather's reputation and honor, the once glorious Jiang family had been reduced to nothing overnight, leaving only my father to carry on the family name. My father had been the youngest and most unremarkable of my grandfather's 3 children. He had always thought that with his 2 older brothers to support the family, he would be able to live a life of leisure and contentment. But in the blink of an eye, he had been forced to grow up and take responsibility for the crumbling remains of the Jiang family. For decades after that, the Jiang family had struggled to survive, constantly facing attacks and obstacles from other noble clans who wanted to finish them off for good. I had been born at the very lowest point of the Jiang family's fortunes, when we were on the verge of collapse. It was then that my father had taken me to the Marquis's mansion and secured the engagement between me and Jiyu Yuanxiao. It was this engagement that had allowed the Jiang family to survive until now. After he finished speaking, Fu Jichu looked at me intently. I'm sure you can guess the rest. I held my breath, my mind reeling as I tried to process everything he had just told me. Yes, I could guess. The Jiang family had once been one of the most powerful families in the capital. Did they really not have the strength to withstand the backlash from a few political enemies? Why had my grandfather never come out of the palace after that meeting with the emperor? The late Marquis and my grandfather had been close friends for decades. Why had he not lifted a finger to help the Jiang family when they were facing destruction? I think I finally understood. It was all part of the emperor's strategy of balancing power. My grandfather and the late Marquis had both held the highest positions in the land. If their families had been joined by marriage, their combined power would have far exceeded that of the imperial family. No emperor would ever allow such a thing to happen. My grandfather had sacrificed his own life to save the remaining members of the Jiang family, to give us a fighting chance to survive. That was why Fu Jichu had told me to think carefully about whether I still wanted to continue my investigation. The truth was far more cruel and complicated than I had ever imagined. It involved not just personal grudges, but the very foundations of imperial power. At that moment, I felt dizzy and disoriented, my head spinning with the weight of the truth. But what about the Marquis's mansion? I poured myself 2 cups of water, drinking them quickly to calm my racing thoughts, and began to think carefully. If, in Jiyu Yuanxiao's past life, I had believed that the Marquis's mansion had deliberately abandoned the Jiang family to their fate, would I have hated Jiyu Yuanxiao, hated the entire Marquis's mansion? Honestly, no. Even now that I knew the truth, I did not feel any hatred toward them. Under the imperial power, being able to protect oneself and one's family was already a great fortune. If I had to hate someone, it would be the emperor who had orchestrated everything. Why would I have taken my revenge on the Marquis's mansion instead? What was more, according to Jiyu Yuanxiao, we had already been married in his past life. In that case, our fates would have been intertwined, our families would have risen and fallen together. Why would I have chosen to destroy the Marquis's mansion and bring destruction upon myself and the remaining members of the Jiang family in the process? It made no sense. So why was Jiyu Yuanxiao so convinced that I had betrayed him? I felt frustrated and confused, my thoughts in complete disarray. Don't panic, I'm here with you, Fujichu said gently, placing his hand over mine to calm me down. His eyes filled with warmth and reassurance. There's one more thing I need to tell you, he added. I looked up at him, signaling for him to continue. After that incident, the Marquis's mansion never surrendered their military power to the Emperor. The late Marquis has long since passed away, and the current Marquis is leading the army on a campaign far away from the capital, that leaves only Jiyu Yuanxiao here in the capital to hold the fort. Recently, the Emperor has been summoning me frequently. He is growing impatient. My heart skipped a beat, a cold realization washing over me. Perhaps the Emperor had originally intended to seize the Marquis's military power during that incident all those years ago, but the Marquis's mansion had refused to submit. So now the Emperor was running out of patience and was planning to take more drastic measures. I suddenly understood it was the Emperor who had destroyed the Marquis's mansion in Jiyu Yuanxiao's past life. What do you think we should do now, Wanwan? Fujichu asked, putting the question back to me. I looked into his eyes and immediately understood what he was implying. He wanted to use this information to force the Marquis's mansion to annul my engagement to Jiyu Yuanxiao. I pressed my lips together thoughtfully. Doesn't Brother Fu find it strange that Jiyu Yuanxiao suddenly accepted the princess's affections? All the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fell into place. Jiyu Yuanxiao had been reborn. He must have known about the Emperor's plan to eliminate the Marquis's mansion. That was why he had agreed to the princess's advances and made such a big show of their relationship. First, it was to tie himself to the imperial family, to make the Emperor think twice before moving against the Marquis's mansion. Second, if things went south, the princess could be used as a hostage to ensure his survival. No wonder the Emperor had been dragging his feet on issuing the edict to formalize Jiyu Yuanxiao and the princess's betrothal. Even though the princess had begged him countless times and even resorted to scheming to sleep with Jiyu Yuanxiao and get herself pregnant, the Emperor did not want to strengthen the Marquis's mansion by allowing them to marry into the imperial family. Fujichu looked at me, and it only took him a moment to understand what I was thinking. You think he knows? He knows about the Emperor's plan, he said, his voice confirming my suspicions. I nodded slowly, which meant that Fujichu's original plan would not work. The Emperor was already determined to eliminate the Jiyu family. Even though Jiyu Yuanxiao had been reborn, he had no way of knowing if he would be able to change his fate and save his family. If I married into the Marquis's mansion now, the Jiang family would be dragged down with them when the Emperor finally made his move. This was not just about my future happiness, it was about the survival of the entire Jiang family. I felt anxious and desperate, but I had no idea what to do. Fujichu thought for a moment, then said, "There is another way, but it will require you to make some sacrifices." I looked at him eagerly, my eyes filled with hope. "Brother, please tell me, I'm willing to do anything." Fujichu looked into my eyes, his gaze steady and sincere, and slowly uttered two words, "Marry me." I froze completely, staring at him in shock. What did you say?" He began to explain his plan in a calm, logical manner. "The Emperor is determined to suppress the Marquis's mansion. Now that your relationship with Jiyu Yuanxiao has become so hostile and public, I can take advantage of this situation to persuade the Emperor to issue an edict betrothing you to me instead. At the same time, I can use Jiyu Yuanxiao's shameless behavior toward you as a reason to reject his betrothal to the princess. In this way, the Jiang family's honor will be preserved, and your father will no longer have to worry about finding someone to protect our family in the future. It will also teach the Marquis's mansion a lesson and serve as a warning to Jiyu Yuanxiao. The only downside is that there will be a lot of gossip about you in the capital. People will talk." I opened my mouth to speak, but Fujichu continued, cutting me off gently. Don't worry, I will never force you to do anything you don't want to. If you never come to love me in the future, I will give you a divorce letter and set you free, no questions asked. Now that Ching Chang is preparing to join the military camp, even though I won't give him any special treatment or privileges, I will make sure he comes back alive. After all, he is the only son left in the Jiang family, he is our family's future. That was already a special privilege in itself. Guaranteeing Ching Chang's safety on the battlefield was more valuable than any position or title. I pressed my lips together tightly, saying nothing, my heart feeling heavy with gratitude and guilt. Seeing my hesitation, Fu Jichu smiled softly, his eyes filled with understanding. You don't have to feel sorry for me, Wanwan. This is my choice. I am doing this willingly. I want you, and if I want to have you, I have to pay the price, whether it's time, money, or power. If you feel indebted to me, if you feel guilty, then try to love me. That will be your repayment to me. When he mentioned repayment, my eyes flickered, and I felt my face grow hot with embarrassment. Even though I was shy, I knew exactly what kind of repayment a man would want from the woman he loved. But something felt off. Why did it feel like I had gone in a full circle and ended up right back where I started? I had clearly told him that I did not want to take advantage of his feelings for me, so why did it feel like I was doing exactly that now? I looked at Fujichu, and in his eyes, I saw nothing but sincerity and affection, no trace of calculation or ulterior motive. I gritted my teeth, making my final decision. Yes, I agree. I accept your kindness, Brother Fu, and I promise that I will do everything in my power to repay you in the future. Fujichu looked at me, smiling gently, and said nothing more. He just kept looking at me, his eyes soft and warm, as if he could see straight into my soul. Fujichu moved with incredible speed. Within a few days, he had already arranged for Ching Chang to join the military camp. We had kept the entire plan a secret from my parents. So on the day Ching Chang left for the camp, only I went to see him off. He and Shinyaro were both dressed in plain, unremarkable clothes. At first, they had been talking and laughing excitedly. But as they got closer to the military camp, their voices had gradually faded away, and they had fallen silent, their expressions growing solemn and nervous. My throat felt tight with emotion as I said, "Elder sister will be waiting for you at home. Come back safely." Ching Chang looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed with unshed tears. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled me into a tight hug, his voice breaking as he said, "Elder sister, wait for me. I promise I will become a great general and come back home in glory. I will never let anyone bully you again. I will definitely beat Jiu Yuanxiao to a pulp and avenge you, elder sister." I patted him gently on the back, my voice choked with tears. All right. You're a grown man now, stop crying like a baby. Hurry up and go before father and mother find out and stop you." Ching Chang let go of me, nodding firmly, his eyes filled with determination. Shinyaro, standing beside him, also had red eyes, but he did not show any sign of reluctance or fear. He looked resolute and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I looked at him and said simply, "Come back alive." Shinyaro was stunned for a moment, then nodded earnestly. "Thank you, elder sister." That sent Ching Chang into a huff. He smacked Shinyaro hard on the arm. "She's my elder sister. Who do you think you are, calling her that so casually? Your elder sister is practically mine too," Shinyaro shot back, rubbing his arm. "Why are you being so petty?" I watched them bicker and shove each other as they walked into the military camp. Fujichu had told me that the northwest border was currently at war with our dynasty. It was almost certain that Ching Chang and Shinyaro would be deployed there. The northwest, a desolate, barren land where the wind howled endlessly and the winters were bitterly cold. "Ching Chang, please come back safe, please." Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. I quickly wiped them away, then turned around only to freeze in place. Jiu Yuanxiao was standing behind me, his eyes fixed on me, his expression unreadable. In the next instant, Princess Jiahe skipped over to his side, looping her arm through his with a coquettish familiarity. She followed his gaze and spotted me, her smile vanishing instantly as her face twisted into a scowl. "Jiang Wn, why are you always popping up like a bad omen? Don't tell me you deliberately found out Yunjing's whereabouts and followed us here." Let me tell you this, my uncle is going to issue an imperial edict betrothing Yunjing and me any day now. Just you wait and see how I make your life a living hell once I'm the young Marquis's wife." The princess ranted on triumphantly, but Jiyu Yuanxiao never took his eyes off me, his gaze cold and piercing. At that moment, everyone on the long street was staring at us, whispering and gossiping behind their hands. Suddenly, a clear, melodious voice cut through the noise. "Oh, I wonder, Princess Jiahe, exactly how do you plan to make life a living hell for my betrothed?" The crowd turned to look. A luxurious carriage was approaching slowly, and Fu Jichu stepped down from it, dressed in a magnificent purple robe, his movements unhurried and elegant. I noticed that he was holding something in his hand. Fu Jichu walked straight up to me, and in full view of everyone, he took my hand in his. I could instantly feel Jiyu Yuanxiao's gaze on me sharpening, turning into a blade that seemed to pierce straight through my skin. Fu Jichu subtly shifted his body to stand in front of me, blocking Jiyu Yuanxiao's intense stare completely. Only then did I allow myself to breathe a small sigh of relief. My attention was then drawn to the bright yellow scroll in his hand. My heart suddenly began to pound wildly against my chest. Across from us, the princess frowned, her voice sharp with confusion and anger. "Grand Secretary, what do you mean by this? What is the meaning of calling Jiang Dublin your betrothed?" Fu Jichu curved his lips into a faint, amused smile, then slowly raised his hand. The bright yellow imperial edict in his hand was impossible to ignore. Gleaming under the sunlight, "The Emperor," he said, his voice loud and clear enough for everyone to hear, "could not bear to see the young Marquis and Wanwan torturing each other like this any longer. He has already issued an imperial edict annulling the marriage contract between the Jiang and Jiyu families. I have lived in the Jiang family since I was a child. I have long secretly cherished a deep affection for Wanwan, my feelings for her growing stronger with each passing day. So I begged the Emperor to grant me this great honor, to betroth Wanwan to me." As he spoke, Fu Jichu lowered his eyes to look at me, his gaze filled with such focused tenderness and deep affection that it took my breath away. The surrounding crowd was buzzing with noise and gossip, but I could neither hear nor see anything else. All I could see was the way he looked at me at that moment. His eyebrows and eyes were soft with contentment, as if he had finally obtained the most precious treasure in the world. Earlier, he had said he was worried that I would be subjected to more gossip and criticism. So now, he was holding the imperial edict and telling everyone that it was he who had begged for this marriage, that it was he who had loved me first, shielding me from all the malicious prying eyes and cruel rumors with his own reputation. My eyes suddenly felt hot, and I had to fight back the urge to cry. Fu Jichu pulled me onto the carriage, then turned to look at the princess and Jiyu Yuanxiao, his voice calm and polite. "I am in a hurry to return to the Jiang mansion to announce the imperial edict. Please excuse me for not staying longer." The coachman shouted "Giddy up," and the horses trotted away, heading straight for the Jiang mansion. Behind us, a sudden commotion erupted, mixed with the princess's shocked gasp, "Yunjing." I lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked back. I saw Jiyu Yuanxiao drop to one knee, coughing up a mouthful of blood that splattered onto the ground, turning it crimson. He was staring straight at me, his eyes swirling with a chaotic storm of emotions: grief, anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. His eyes were slowly turning red. Even from a distance, I could see his shoulders trembling violently. He seemed to realize that I was looking at him, because he stretched out his hand toward me, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. But in the next second, the carriage turned a corner, and the long street, along with Jiyu Yuanxiao's broken figure, vanished from my sight completely. A voice sounded above my head, tinged with a hint of displeasure. "What, do you feel sorry for him?" I turned my head to look at Fu Jichu. "No, I just thought it was ridiculous, how things had ended up like this." I couldn't help but look up at Fu Jichu, curiosity tugging at me. "Brother Fu, if one day I betray you, what would you do?" Fu Jichu lowered his eyes, a faint, secret smile playing on his lips. "You would have to fall in love with me first, before you could betray me." I pouted my lips and said nothing, looking away. Fu Jichu laughed softly, then continued, his voice gentle and sincere, "If you ever betray me, then it must be because I was not good enough for you. I would never blame you for that." His words, carried by the wind, whispered past my ears and stirred up ripples in my heart. I couldn't help but press further, my voice quiet. What if it was the worst kind of betrayal, the kind that destroys your entire family? Jiang Wn. It was the first time Fujichu had called me by my full name, his tone serious and solemn. He looked straight into my eyes, his gaze clear and unwavering. Every word he spoke weighted with sincerity. "I know exactly what kind of person you are. If you ever do something like that, then it must be because I did something unforgivable to you, or because there is a blood feud between us that can never be resolved. I still would not blame you. I would deserve it." At that moment, I truly felt the depth of Fujichu's love for me. "Would you really not hate me?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Fujichu smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "What good would hating you do? Would it bring anything back?" "Yes, what good would hating me do? It wouldn't change anything." Fujichu was about to say something else when the coachman called out from outside, "Your Excellency, we have arrived at the Jiang mansion." We were already at the door. My parents had obviously received the news ahead of time, because they were waiting for us at the entrance, their faces a mixture of shock, joy, and relief. Fujichu helped me down from the carriage, and he never let go of my hand. With that one imperial edict, my engagement to Jiyu Yuanxiao was dissolved, and at the same time, a new marriage contract was formed between me and Fujichu. The wedding date was set exactly 2 months from now. Today was supposed to be the day my father found out that I had secretly arranged for Qingchang to join the military. I had fully prepared myself to be scolded and punished, to be forced to kneel in the ancestral hall, but because of the sudden arrival of the imperial edict, that matter was temporarily put on hold, forgotten in the excitement of the news. Afterward, Fujichu and my father went to the study to talk. My mother took me back to my boudoir, chattering away excitedly, her eyes shining with happiness. It was clear that she was overjoyed with this turn of events. My parents insisted that Fujichu stay for dinner, and then personally saw him off to the gate of the mansion. Before Fujichu left, he gave me a meaningful look. I was a little confused by it, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I had thought that next, my father would scold me for acting without his permission and punish me, but I waited for a long time, and he didn't say a single word about it. I snuck a glance at him, curious. He let out a cold huff, but there was no real anger in his voice. "The Grand Secretary has already told me everything. Letting Qingchang go to the military to gain some experience is not a bad thing. As for you, hurry back to your room and start preparing your wedding dress. You're getting married soon, and you still don't know how to behave in a more dignified manner." "I'll go right away," I replied, my heart light with relief, thanks to that imperial edict. The atmosphere in the Jiang mansion had become much lighter and happier, the heavy cloud of worry that had hung over us for so long finally lifting. The next day, I heard the news that Jiyu Yuanxiao had suddenly come down with a severe case of wind cold, and while Princess Jiahe was taking care of him, the two of them had accidentally shared an intimate moment, a moment that had sealed their fate. Now, their marriage was inevitable. There was no way out of it. And the most ironic part was that the date of their wedding was announced to be exactly the same as the original date set for my wedding to Jiyu Yuanxiao, which meant that in 2 months' time, Jiyu Yuanxiao and I would both be getting married, just not to each other. It was almost too dramatic to be true. Ever since our marriage contract was announced, Fujichu came to the Jiang mansion often. Our days were peaceful and harmonious, filled with laughter and warmth. But I knew that beneath this calm surface, a storm was already brewing. I had a premonition that something big was going to happen on our wedding day. Just as I was lost in these dark thoughts, someone suddenly tapped me lightly on the forehead. Fujichu sat down in front of me, a playful smile on his lips. "What are you thinking about so intently? You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders." "Nothing," I replied. Forcing a smile and looking down at the half-finished red veil in my hands, Fujichu reached out and gently took the needle and thread from my fingers, setting them aside. "Stop embroidering for now. You're so distracted that you'll prick your finger sooner or later. We can just hire a skilled embroideress to finish it for you." I shook my head, my voice soft but determined. Mother says that only if the bride embroiders her own veil with her own hands will the marriage be happy and harmonious. I finished embroidering one a long time ago, when I was still engaged to Gu Yuanxiao, but I don't want to use that one now. It doesn't feel right, it would be unfair to you, so I decided to embroider a new one from scratch. It will be ready in a few more days. After I finished speaking, Fu Jichu fell silent, saying nothing for a long time. What's wrong? I asked, looking up at him in confusion. Suddenly, he pulled me into his arms, hugging me tightly, so tightly that I could barely breathe. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice low and hoarse, trembling slightly with emotion. Wanwan, you are looking forward to this marriage, aren't you, to our future together? I could hear the faint note of insecurity in his voice, the vulnerability of someone who had waited so long for something he feared he might lose. I raised my arms and hugged him back, my voice soft and sincere. Yes, I am looking forward to it. He had treated me so well, loved me so deeply. I was willing to give this a chance, to try to love him back. Fujichu slowly pulled away from me, his clear eyes glowing with a bright, joyful light, like stars twinkling in the night sky. He leaned down slowly, his face getting closer and closer to mine. A soft, gentle kiss landed on my lips, lingering there, warm and tender. I held my breath, my heart pounding wildly, my fingers curling tightly into the fabric of his robe. Gradually, the kiss deepened, our breaths mingling together. The embroidery tray on the table was knocked over, the half-finished red veil crumpling into a mess on the floor. When the long, sweet kiss finally ended, I was breathless, my face flushed bright red. Fujichu held me gently in his arms, patting my back softly to help me catch my breath. I rested my head on his chest, my face burning like a shrimp, too shy to look up at him. He pressed a soft kiss to my earlobe, then asked, his voice quiet and curious, "Can you tell me now? Why did you ask me those questions in the carriage that day, about betrayal?" My body stiffened slightly. I hadn't expected him to bring that up again. Before I could find the right words to answer, he spoke first, his voice gentle and reassuring. "It's all right if you don't want to talk about it, I won't push you." I thought for a moment, then made up my mind. I lifted my head from his chest and looked up at him, my voice steady. I told him everything about Gu Yuanxiao being reborn, about his accusations of me betraying him in his past life, about his hatred and his obsession with changing our fate. After I finished speaking, Fujichu fell silent again, just holding me in his arms, his chin resting on top of my head. The sky outside the window was growing darker, the sun setting below the horizon. I gently pushed him away, reminding him softly that it was time for him to leave. Only then did Fujichu speak, his voice calm and firm. "I am not Gu Yuanxiao. You have nothing to fear from me." I nodded gently, murmuring a soft and watched him walk out of the Jiang mansion, his figure disappearing into the dusk. For a long time after that, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Fujichu became increasingly busy with official duties, and even Gu Yuanxiao stopped coming to pester me. Time flew by in the blink of an eye, and then, the day of the wedding finally arrived. My heart was filled with anxiety and unease. I had been distracted all morning, a nagging feeling in my gut that something terrible was about to happen. I was sitting in front of the dressing table, letting the matchmaker and my maids dress me in my red wedding gown, when suddenly, the matchmaker and the maids were knocked unconscious, slumping to the floor. In the next instant, a strong hand grabbed my wrist, yanking me up. "Come with me." It was Gu Yuanxiao. He was dressed in a bright red wedding robe, but he looked disheveled and unkempt, his hair messy, his eyes bloodshot. But the way he looked at me, there was such intense, burning possessiveness in his gaze that it made my blood run cold. All the unease I had been feeling all morning reached its peak at that moment. "Gu Yuanxiao, are you insane?" I shouted, struggling to free my wrist from his grip. He was supposed to be on his way to pick up Princess Jiahe and marry her today. How dare he break into the Jiang mansion like this? His eyes were completely red, filled with a wild, desperate madness. "You can hate me, you can resent me, I don't care, but I will not watch you marry someone else. Not when I know what will happen." Wanwan, Fujichu is not a good man. He is not the gentle, righteous person he pretends to be. Those scandalous rumors about you and him that spread all over the capital, he was the one who ordered his men to spread them. He begged the emperor for that imperial edict a long time ago, but he deliberately kept it from you. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike, he even deliberately let the princess cling to me, using her to keep me occupied so that he could get close to you without any interference. I listened to his words, feeling a flicker of surprise in my heart, but I didn't show any emotion on my face, keeping my expression calm and cold. So what? I asked, my voice steady and indifferent. You can't marry him. You just can't. Gu Yuanxiao roared, shaking me by the shoulders. His eyes filled with a desperate, pleading madness. I have already discussed it with my father. We will take advantage of the chaos today to escape from the capital. We will go far away, where no one can find us. Unwind, come with me, please. Gu Yuanxiao looked at me with such earnest, desperate eyes, as if I was his only hope, his last lifeline. If I had felt even the slightest bit of panic earlier, I was completely calm now, my mind clear and sharp. Gu Yuanxiao, I said, my voice cold and firm, pulling my wrist free from his grasp. You should run away by yourself, while you still have a chance, while you can still save the Marquis's mansion. Gu Yuanxiao froze, his face paling, his expression crumbling. You know everything. I nodded slowly, my eyes meeting his without any hesitation. Yes, I know, so don't drag me into this. Don't drag the Jiang family down with your doomed cause. He stared at me in disbelief, taking a step back, his hands falling limply to his sides. I looked at him, my voice softening slightly, but there was no warmth in it, only a quiet finality. I have never once thought that I would betray you, in this life, or in your past life. If you truly want to know the truth about what happened back then, go and investigate it. Find out the real reason why the Marquis's mansion was destroyed, and if you do find out, you can tell me. But that is all, there can be nothing more between us. This had always been a knot in my heart, a question that lingered, unresolved. It wouldn't cause me unbearable pain if it remained untied, but it would always be there, a faint, nagging presence. In the end, between the Marquis's mansion and me, Gu Yuanxiao chose his family. As he should have. Before he left, he stared at me intently, his voice hoarse with a question that cut through the silence. Have you fallen in love with Fujichu? I didn't answer him. After all, I didn't even know the answer myself. Gu Yuanxiao's footsteps had barely faded when Fujichu walked in. Wanwan. I looked up at him, my tone calm and knowing. You've been hiding for a long time, haven't you? He smiled faintly, stepping closer to me. Long enough. Why didn't you answer his last question just now? He asked, his gaze gentle yet probing. I countered with a question of my own, my eyes sharp with curiosity. Why did you let him go? The emperor wanted Gu Yuanxiao dead, there was no mistaking that, and as the Grand Secretary, Fujichu was supposed to obey the emperor's every command. Fujichu turned his gaze toward the direction Gu Yuanxiao had fled, letting out a long, heavy sigh. His voice dropped to a low murmur, tinged with regret. Marquis Gu has held the military power for years, garrisoning the borderlands. No foreign tribes have dared to invade as long as he's been there. Even though there have been whispers and suspicions in the court, Marquis Gu has never once acted out of line, never once shown the slightest hint of rebellion. But in his past life, the Marquis's mansion was destroyed. Gu Yuanxiao died right here in the capital. If Marquis Gu had truly wanted to rebel, he would have done so long ago. He dared not hand over the military power, and I could guess why. He knew full well that the emperor distrusted him. Without the army to back him up, he would have met the same fate as my grandfather, dying a quiet, mysterious death in the palace, never to be seen again. He had stationed himself at the border, far away from the capital, but left Gu Yuanxiao here. It was his way of showing the emperor his loyalty, using his own son as a hostage to prove that he had no ill intentions. But the emperor, he had never understood. What about you? I asked, my voice soft with concern. Fujichu had ascended to the position of Grand Secretary at a young age, his power and prestige unmatched in the court. He reminded me so much of my grandfather, brilliant, ambitious, and standing at the very center of the storm. At my words, Fujichu reached out and gently stroked my cheek, his touch warm and reassuring. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I hesitated for a moment. Then asked the question that had been lingering in my mind, what Gu Yuanxiao said just now, about spreading those rumors, about waiting to tell me about the edict. Is it true? Fu Jichu sighed softly, taking my hand in his and lacing our fingers together. His eyes were clear and honest as he met my gaze. Do you believe him, or do you believe me? I thought for a moment, then answered without hesitation, I believe you. Fu Jichu's eyes lit up, a bright, joyful smile spreading across his face. Before I could say anything else, he leaned down and kissed me deeply, his lips warm and firm against mine. I had no strength to resist him. When he finally pulled away, his breath was ragged, his voice low and hoarse as he whispered in my ear, "That's all that matters," a voice called out from outside, breaking the tender moment between us. "The auspicious hour is almost here. Hurry and check if the bridegroom has arrived." Fu Jichu pinched my cheek gently, his eyes filled with affection. "I'll see you soon, my lady." With that, he jumped out of the window, disappearing into the crowd. A moment later, he walked through the front gate of the Jiang mansion, surrounded by cheering crowds, to marry me. Despite the little hiccup caused by Gu Yuanxiao's intrusion, the wedding proceeded smoothly. As I sat on the wedding bed in the bridal chamber, waiting for Fu Jichu to return, I heard the news from the Jiyu mansion. Princess Jiahe had been taken hostage by Gu Yuanxiao on her wedding day. The wedding feast had almost turned into a funeral, with chaos erupting everywhere. In the end, Gu Yuanxiao had escaped. The emperor was furious. He issued an imperial decree, ordering a massive manhunt for Gu Yuanxiao, ***, no mercy, ***. Because of Gu Yuanxiao's incident, not many guests had stayed for the wedding banquet. That was why Fu Jichu returned to the bridal chamber unusually early. The matchmaker and the maids had all retreated, leaving us alone. I sat on the edge of the wedding bed, my heart pounding nervously. When the red veil was lifted, I saw Fu Jichu looking at me with a brilliant, radiant smile. Before I could say a word, he tilted my chin up and kissed me fiercely. My mind flashed back to the day before the wedding, when my mother had come to me with that book of intimate illustrations, trying to teach me what to do on my wedding night. I had pushed her away, flustered and embarrassed. I struggled slightly, and Fu Jichu pulled away. His eyes dark and crimson with suppressed desire. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice rough and hoarse. "I was just so happy. I didn't mean to scare you." I shifted to the side, my mind racing as I tried to think of something to say to break the awkward silence, but Fu Jichu seemed to read my mind, smiling softly as he reached out to brush a strand of hair behind my ear. "Don't be afraid, I won't force you to do anything you don't want to." With that, he pressed a light, gentle kiss to my lips. "Wanwan," he called my name softly, his voice warm and tender. I replied with a quiet hum, but he didn't say anything else. He just held me in his arms for a long, long time. Then he stood up silently and went to the bathing room. The entire night passed without incident. We slept soundly, side by side, just like we had done so many times before. Spring had arrived now. Fu Jichu was busier than ever these days, and I could sense that something big was about to happen in the court. Ching Chang wrote to me every month, telling me about his experiences in the military camp, about how many enemies he had killed in battle. Days passed quietly, flowing like water. Fu Jichu and I grew more and more comfortable with each other, our relationship deepening with every passing day. After summer ended, the emperor suddenly fell ill, his condition worsening day by day. The crown prince was appointed to oversee state affairs in his place. During this time, Fu Jichu became even busier. He left for the palace at dawn every day and didn't return home until midnight. I barely saw him at all. That night, I waited up for him for a long time, dozing off by the window when I finally heard the sound of his footsteps. He looked exhausted, covered in dust and fatigue from a long day of work. "Why haven't you slept yet?" he asked, his voice soft with concern as he walked over to me. I covered my mouth and yawned, smiling sleepily up at him. "I was waiting for you." At my words, the weariness in Fu Jichu's eyes melted away, replaced by a warm, soft glow. He picked me up gently and carried me to the bed. "I've been swamped with work lately," he murmured, tucking me under the covers. You don't have to wait up for me every night, you know." I reached out and took his hand, my fingers curling around his. "I know, you leave the house before I wake up every morning and come back after I've fallen asleep. You must be so tired. That's why I was thinking. You don't have to rush back and forth between the palace and the mansion every day. Isn't there a place for officials to rest in the palace?" I had suggested it purely for his own good, to let him get some much-needed rest. But at my words, Fujichu's face darkened instantly. He gritted his teeth, pinching my cheek hard enough to make me yelp. He said nothing, just turned and went to wash up, then climbed into bed beside me. By now, I was used to sharing a bed with him every night. On normal nights, as soon as he climbed into bed, he would pull me into his arms, holding my hand tightly as we fell asleep. But tonight, he lay quietly on the outer edge of the bed, his eyes closed, as if he had already fallen asleep. I frowned, feeling a strange sense of distance between us. "Fujichu." I called his name softly. Ever since we got married, I hadn't called him Brother Fu anymore. It just felt wrong, somehow, too intimate for a husband and wife, and he wouldn't let me call him Grand Secretary either, saying it sounded too formal, too distant, so I had taken to calling him by his name instead. "Are you asleep?" "No." I turned over to face him, my voice filled with worry. "What's wrong? Did something happen at the palace today?" Fujichu turned his head to look at me, his eyes dark with a hint of resentment. Before I could react, he rolled over and pinned me beneath him, his body pressing down on mine. "What are you doing?" I exclaimed, panicking slightly as I tried to push him away. Fujichu silenced me with a kiss, his lips moving roughly against mine, as if he was punishing me for something. I rush back and forth between the palace and the mansion every day. Exhausting myself to the bone, he growled against my lips, his voice low and angry, yet tinged with a hint of hurt. "Do you think I do it for fun? I do it because I want to see you, even if it's just for a moment. I do it because I want to hold you in my arms at night. But you just want to push me away." He sounded genuinely wronged, like a child who had been denied his favorite toy. The longer I spent with him, the more I realized that Fujichu was not the cold, aloof, untouchable man he appeared to be on the surface. He had a petty, childish side to him, so many little quirks and tantrums. I sighed, reaching up to cup his face in my hands, my voice soft with amusement and affection as I tried to soothe him. "I was only thinking of you, you know. I just didn't want you to be so tired. If you don't want to stay at the palace, then don't. I'll wait up for you every night." Okay," he mumbled, his anger melting away at my words. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his breath warm against my skin. "Wonwan, you used to love calling me Brother Fu the most," he said suddenly, his voice muffled. I fell silent, my cheeks heating up slightly at the memory. "Call me that again," he whispered, his lips brushing against my earlobe. "Brother Fu," I whispered, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop them. In late autumn, the emperor passed away. The crown prince ascended the throne as the new emperor. Fujichu had been spending a lot of time with the crown prince lately, and I could guess what they had been discussing. The emperor's illness had come on suddenly, too suddenly to be natural. It wasn't until the depths of winter, when the snow was falling heavily outside, that Fujichu finally had some free time. We had been married for a year now. Ching-Chang wrote to me as well, saying that he was returning to the capital with the army and would be home soon, in time for the Lunar New Year. What came as a complete surprise was that Marquis Gu, who hadn't set foot in the capital for over a decade, had also returned with the army. On the day Ching-Chang arrived home, he stormed straight into the Gu mansion and beat Gu Yuanxiao black and blue. Miraculously, Gu Yuanxiao hadn't fought back. He had just stood there and taken it. When I heard about it, I had been skeptical, but Ching-Chang had just shrugged and said, "He owes me his life." The hardships of military life had made Ching-Chang more mature and steady, but at home, he was still the same impulsive, hot-headed boy he had always been. He looked at me proudly, his chest puffed out with pride. "Elder sister, I avenged you." Ching-Chang told me the story, how there had been constant battles and skirmishes on the northwest border, how Gu Yuanxiao had arrived there not long after he did, how during one battle, Gu Yuanxiao had made a mistake and almost died at the hands of the enemy. I was so brave and noble, I didn't hesitate for a second, Ching Chang boasted, waving his arms around dramatically. I flew through the air and saved his life, even though I wanted to beat him up right then and there to avenge you. But I couldn't, we were in the middle of a battle, after all. I laughed, shaking my head fondly at his antics. Stop being silly, come eat dinner. In the blink of an eye, the new year was over. Ching Chang had to return to the military camp soon. On the day I went to see him off, I spotted Jiyu Yuanxiao from a distance. He was standing alone in the snow, dressed in a black robe, his eyes fixed on me, his gaze unwavering. He looked like he wanted to come over and talk to me, but he didn't dare take a single step forward. Fu Jichu held my hand tightly, his fingers laced through mine. After seeing Ching Chang off, we turned and walked back home together. As soon as we got back, Fu Jichu pulled me into his arms, a soft smile on his lips. I've had people keeping an eye on Jiyu Yuanxiao this whole time. The knot in your heart, it can finally be untied now. I looked up at him in confusion. You didn't betray him, Wanwan, Fu Jichu said, his voice gentle but firm. He just misunderstood everything. Fu Jichu told me the truth, how after Jiyu Yuanxiao had gone to the border, he had spent every waking moment investigating what had happened in his past life. The person who had caused the downfall of the Marquis's mansion was none other than one of Marquis Gu's most trusted confidants. He had stolen Marquis Gu's military tally and handed it over to the late emperor. That was why, when the Marquis's mansion was destroyed, Marquis Jiyu had been powerless to save his son. He had no army to command without the tally, and at the time, it was said that I had discovered the spy in the mansion, but I had been captured and imprisoned before I could warn anyone. That was why Jiyu Yuanxiao had thought that I was in league with the spy, that I had betrayed him. While I was struggling against the spy, Jiyu Yuanxiao had escaped. I had been locked up in a dark cell afterward. Jiyu Yuanxiao had never come back to save me. He had thought it was all a trap. In the end, he hadn't been able to escape the late emperor's pursuit. He had died, and I had died in that dark cell as well. The day Jiyu Yuanxiao had learned the truth, it had been the very same day Ching Chang had saved his life on the battlefield. That was why he had been so distracted during the battle, why he had almost died. How do you know all these details so clearly? I asked, looking up at Fu Jichu in confusion. He just let out a low, amused hum and didn't answer my question. Just then, a servant came in to report that young Marquis Jiyu was here to see me. I instantly remembered what I had said to him on my wedding day. I have never once thought that I would betray you. If you truly want to know the truth, go and investigate it, and if you do find out, you can tell me, but that is all. It seemed that he had come here to tell me the truth in person, but I already knew everything. Fu Jichu turned the servant away without hesitation, refusing to let Jiyu Yuanxiao in. After that day, Jiyu Yuanxiao came to the mansion almost every single day. The snow was falling heavily in the capital, but he never missed a day. Rumors began to spread all over the capital, gossiping about the history between me and Jiyu Yuanxiao, about how he still pined for me even after I was married. That day, the maid Chuanya came in to report that Jiyu Yuanxiao was here again. Madam, she said hesitantly, wringing her hands nervously, he's been coming every day for over 10 days now, maybe we should. Fu Jichu walked in just then, his eyes cold as he shot Chuanya a sharp glance. Chuanya immediately fell silent, bowing her head and scurrying out of the room. Fu Jichu pulled me into his arms, pressing a soft kiss to my lips, his touch possessive and warm. My lady, he murmured against my lips, his voice low and unhappy. Your husband is not very pleased right now. His kiss deepened, filled with passion and longing. Wanwan, he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. Don't go see him, please. Don't ever see him again. I wrapped my arms around his neck, kissing him back for the first time, my response tentative but sincere. I nodded against his chest, my voice soft and reassuring. Okay, I wanted to make him feel at ease, to let him know that Jiyu Yuanxiao was in the past now. The past. It was finally, truly in the past. In the heat of the moment, Fu Jichu pulled back slightly, his eyes dark with emotion as he looked into mine. Do you love me, Wanwan? I looked straight into his eyes. My voice honest and true. I don't know, but I think I want to spend the rest of my life with you. That must mean I love you. I love you too, he whispered, pressing his lips to mine again. Inside the room, the couple kissed passionately, their love and devotion for each other evident in every touch, every caress. Outside the door, a lone figure stood in the snow, his body covered in a thick layer of white, his clothes soaked through from the cold. Jiyu Yuanxiao stared at the door that would never open for him, his heart breaking into a million pieces. Finally, he could no longer hold on, he doubled over, coughing up a mouthful of blood that stained the white snow crimson. He had been given a second chance at life. He had managed to save the Marquis's mansion this time, to change his fate, but in doing so, he had lost the person he loved the most. He thought to himself, maybe he should have been more reckless on his wedding day. Maybe he should have dragged her away with him, no matter the consequences. Memories of the past flashed through his mind, the times they had spent together, the laughter, the tears, the promises they had made to each other. Jiyu Yuanxiao let out a bitter, broken laugh. It was all his fault, it was all his own fault. He hadn't loved her enough, he hadn't trusted her enough. This was his punishment, his eternal, unending punishment. Jiyu Yuanxiao tilted his head back, staring up at the sky as the snowflakes fell gently around him, landing on his face and melting into cold tears. He remembered the snow appreciation banquet they had attended together a year ago, the way she had smiled at him under the falling snow, her eyes shining like stars. He thought to himself, he hated snow. He would hate snow for the rest of his life.